Well, that's some ominous starting music for the stream. Just tons of demonic violins. Freddy, how are you? And let's in. Welcome back, guys. Bad boy. Welcome to the very start of the stream. You guys are early. We're still getting announcements out of the way. Alright, that's done and done. Like they take food that's already good and try to make it burn your mouth. I hate spice. Well, that's a... I guess that's a description of spicy food. Not like, I mean, spicy food is essentially tricking your mucous membranes into believing room temperature is far hotter than it actually is. That's what's happening. Green Shadow, how are you? Doing well, my friend. Gonna stream some more Vampyr Facebook. That's the plan for tonight. Let's just go ahead and load the game up real quick so we can have the creepy violin music not blasting our eardrums out. I look like a haggard old man? No one's told me that before, but I'll take your word for it. It's possible. Just go ahead and pause that while we wait for more people to show up. One baked bean, 525 to collect. Is that code? Is that code for something? Is there a mystery afoot in chat? What do you mean you can hear nothing? You guys can hear me in chat, right? Someone in chat said they hear nothing. Where's my voice going all of a sudden? I'm getting hoarse for no reason. I'm starting to sound like that grimacing old man that guy mentioned earlier. That was bizarre. Alright, everyone hears me. That guy was just crazy, apparently. Or had his volume off. That's always a possibility. Alt-tab out the game. There we go. Everything's now fixed and ready to go. We'll wait a few minutes for people to show up in chat, and then we'll get started. I'm not sure what we'll start off doing tonight. I'm not sure if I want to go for the next story mission, or if I want to nom on someone's neck. I feel like I'm underleveled. I barely beat that werewolf last night. I killed Evil EB's littlest brother. I have no idea what you're talking about. If you're mentioning this game, I killed some guy I met on the street who was murdering someone else. I will find my voice at some point during tonight's stream. I don't know why it's getting raspy all of a sudden. I need to kill someone. I'm underleveled. I'm gonna get something to drink though because my voice is not coming back. Hopefully that helps. I've heard about The Town with No Name. That's a Western movie. I've never seen it though, so any reference to it outside of the name will be lost on me. So, what do you guys think of the Detroit video? It seems like it's doing really well. I want to apologize if I was annoying with the bits giving... Oh no, you're fine, Neptune. I did change my bit settings, so now it's a 25-bit minimum to ring the bell. Just to cut down on people who were ringing the bell for like 1 or 2 bits, like constantly. So it was alright when people were doing it every once in a while, but I guess people were just feeling really generous during the Detroit stream, so they were just ringing it constantly. Liked how there was a joke with fan fiction. I did have a fan fiction line, didn't I? Toilet sin was good sin. You're probably like the part where I yell at the end of it off mic, right? There is one sin that I regret not putting in the game that I actually mentioned during the stream, but I forgot about. And it would have been after you find out that Alice is an android. I was going to send the game for how creepy that is that you could just buy children androids. And how that would basically just be completely backlogged by pedophiles buying them up. And I forgot to put that in. I was kicking myself like 5 minutes after releasing the video. And I was like, oh, that one, yeah. Because it had been in the back of the mind, me thinking I'd left something out. Are we going to talk to more people today? I believe you're going to always be talking to people in this game. But we're also going to be killing some tonight. We need to level up. We barely beat the werewolf last night. Komsky wasn't really obstructing justice. He wasn't actually obliged to answer any of those questions. If anything, he could have asked for. He could have just said, "No, you're not allowed in," and I need my lawyer to go talk to my lawyer or something like that. I'm aware there's several shitty ends to Beyond Human. I'm thinking, wow, that name actually really confuses me when you say Beyond Human, because now I'm thinking of 2 different David Cage games. Is he talking about Beyond Two Souls or Become Human? I'm assuming you're saying Become Human, and you're talking about the secret Komsky ending you get if all 3 characters die. I haven't seen it, but I do know about it. Your toaster is currently banging on your door. Might want to check on that, dude. You might want to check on that. How am I liking Vampyr? It's very talkative. That's the best way to describe it. But it's time to actually start playing it. The chat's kind of slowly filling up. I'm guessing it's going to be one of those nights where it doesn't really get a lot of people into it. Or at least not all at once, because, you know, alerts are not going out properly. But whatever, it is what it is. Alright, we left off last night. We killed a werewolf. We were talking to a lot of people, and now the game wants us to go to Whitechapel because we're researching some kind of blackmailing something someone's doing to our vampire lady friend. Okay. But I'm thinking I should start off by killing a dude and drinking their blood because I am weak as fuck, y'all. I barely got past that freaking werewolf. I had to cheese the hell out of that thing. I need to make more serum. Okay, light regeneration serum or light blood serum. We need regeneration serum. We don't really know anyone who's suffering from a cold right now, so we'll hold off making that. Cook for Souls, how are you? And welcome back, dude. Alright, we actually have a mission we can turn into that guy outside who sells guns. So that'll be a little bit of experience. And then we need to decide if we're going to nom on someone. You guys can't see it on stream, but this game gives me so much frame tearing, it's ridiculous. I never get frame tearing. There's got to be a setting I can do something to fix this. Let's lower a setting or two. What do we want to lower? Maybe it's the anti-aliasing causing it. Let's turn the post-processing down to high. And let's turn this down to... Is TXAA or is it FXAA the more strenuous version of anti-aliasing? I can never remember which one is which. Someone tell Freddy to refresh his stream or plug his microphone, plug his speakers in because he can't hear anything for some reason. Why do I give the game so far? It's far too early to decide that. Wait till near the end of the game. We'll just turn it down to TXAA. See if that helps. Oh shit. There. There. I guess... What is this game about? Vampires. Vampires. It's right there in the name, guys. Did that work? Yeah, it appears to have worked. It seems to not really have to solve the issue. Yeah, we fought a werewolf at the end of last night's stream. It was not exactly that riveting of a fight, to be honest. You didn't really miss much. Who are you again?
Good evening, Nurse Hawkins.
Good evening, Dr. Reed.
You're the one that does what? She's the one who saves... We probably want to eat this lady because she sells beds to people who can pay, so she's kind of a terrible person. But we want to level her up. We want to get these hints that make her worth more. We need that juicy blood to actually, you know, boost us a bit. And what a surprise! That's the guy we actually had to turn a mission in, so maybe he'll give us a hint. Let's go talk to him.
Goodbye, Nurse Hawkins.
What was her name? I need to remember that. Hawkins, right? Alright. You're disappointed with the game? It's not really what I was hoping for much either.
Said she was being watched by vampire hunters. Where are they hiding? I should investigate.
I've talked to you already, haven't I?
Good evening. I'm Dr. Reed.
Nope, I haven't talked to him yet.
To meet a colleague, sir. Especially when he was supposedly dead.
A colleague? Are you a doctor too?
Not anymore, sir. I used to be Dr. Rakesh Chadana. Now, I'm just Mr. Chadana, pawnbroker and humble guardian of this morgue.
What do you mean?
We kill only those who are deserving. That wouldn't be too bad to play it like that.
License revoked.
No, sir. It is just
We gotta be careful. We can't kill too many people, though, or else the district goes to absolute hell.
But I used to be a real doctor.
Well, he trades stuff.
Are you afraid?
See if we can learn anything about
uneasy
someone.
being surrounded by so many corpses?
Why should I? These bodies are empty vessels. Flesh left to decay. Poof. No soul anymore. All gone.
Oh, very Hindu.
An interesting point of view. And quite an exotic one, too. Most people fear, or at least have a respect, for dead flesh.
Sir, as a medic during the war,
This is such a
I learned to
romantic
face
conversation.
my death and the death of others. It's the pain we have to tame, not death itself.
Well, you got a hint for him.
How did you get this job?
After I left the army, I worked as an undertaker down by the docks. A dangerous place. with
I
many
didn't cheat. I
unpleasant
went back and,
business.
while I was streaming, after I did the recycling thing, I went back and filmed, literally on stream, I got different endings. Because no one liked that ending.
Do you work here alone?
Yes.
Everyone
very
was
easy
mad at
work,
me for,
sir.
you know, those two
All I
dying.
have to do is watch a few bodies.
Besides, the whole
Situation was
PlayStation
different
woke
when the
thing made
main
for a
morgue
better
was
way to end the
still
video.
open.
Why do you have to watch these bodies?
Because these poor fellows have no names. We keep them in case someone comes looking for the missing. Sadly, very rarely happens.
Why close the hospital's main morgue?
It was for sanitary reasons after the beginning of the epidemic.
You left a lot of actual
Cadavers had to
bodies
be
in there,
moved
though.
to the nearest mass grave.
Have we met before?
I don't think so.
You
sir.
love the Detroit vid? Thank you.
Why?
When we first talked, you said you were glad to meet me since I was reported
That's the
dead.
longest video I've
Funny
made in
story,
like
sir.
nearly 2 years.
Your sister came here a few nights ago. You were missing, and she was looking for your body. She must be very relieved now.
Let's trade.
Please show me what you have to sell.
Of course. It's just trinkets and curios, really. But I'm sure they can be useful.
Trinkets and curios. It's just fucking chemicals. You know, stuff that you can definitely don't get an addiction to. Codeine. Potassium ergotamine. Opium. Yeah, this guy just says opium. He's just little curios and trinkets. Buy multiple. We're just gonna buy all the good shit. Opium and codeine. Oh, see you later, typical. I don't know. Where's the one dude at we need to talk to?
I'm sorry you ended up on my plain and cold medical bench, sir. I understand you must be very angry about this unfair situation.
I'm the first drug... Well, technically you could say a vampire is already drug addicted.
Locked. Good evening, Nurse Hawkins.
No, I
Good
already
evening,
talked to
Dr.
you.
Reed.
Goodbye,
They always
Nurse
have their
Hawkins.
backs to me, so it's hard to tell who I'm talking to until I click on them.
It's locked, all right.
You sold crack before, and you're being serious. Well, as long as you're not still selling it, I suppose. It's like we're, you know, we are a creature of the night, a mortal, hunter of men, and we dig through the garbage for grease and screws. John, actually did not know enough about John Oliver to comment on the British man buying curios from a Indian guy, but sure, why not? Where is that? Oh shit! Does no one ever notice these, you know, ravenous zombies outside every business? Oh, I hate this stamina shit. It feels so out of place in this kind of game. I feel like I've been this way before. The stun lock, I don't know, the combat just feels off. See, it just doesn't, I don't know, there's something about the combat that just, not just because I got my ass kicked there, it doesn't feel like it has enough weight in reaction to when you hit someone. I feel like people I think I've just stun locked with an attack, instantly counterattack me, and I'm like, well, what? Okay, at least I just respawned where I needed to. There's like a guy I want to find and turn my mission into him. Not that, it's out front near the waterfront, but where the fuck is the waterfront? Obviously not that way. Yeah, I can sneak around somehow. Well, coming up here was a big waste of time. Is there drop attacks in the game? Nope, no drop attacks. I need that blood. We have to go to Whitechapel as well. We definitely need to kill someone and level up, though. We are super freaking weak. Where even am I right now? I need to get... Yeah, it should be right. Okay, I need to cut back around here to the waterfront. That's where that guy is, the merchant. You killed the insane toaster. Congrats, dude. Congrats on your... I guess that's your plot line for tonight? Something about a mystical toaster? Sure. Alright, we're on the right track now. Is this going to be a minimal feeding playthrough? I'm going to try not to kill people that I think don't deserve it, but I'm not going to like try to beat the game by not feeding on anyone. That seems like a mistake to me.
Good evening, Dr. Tibbets.
Dr. Reed, any good news to share?
Have I learned anything new about you?
You're exhausting yourself, Corcoran. Maybe you should think about preserving your strength.
No.
No.
You've nothing to prove, Dr. Tibbets.
I am perfectly fine.
Okay, no, nothing new for him.
Goodbye, Dr. Tibbets.
Is there a difficulty setting in the game? I don't think there... Yeah, there's a difficulty setting, I believe. I think I'm playing on normal difficulty, though. Okay, I don't want to talk to her because that's the creepy-eyed lady. The mailman? Oh, I need this guy. This guy need a return a wallet too.
Good evening, Milton.
Good evening, Doctor. Still trying to save lives?
I have found your wallet.
I have some good news, Milton.
What? The epidemic's over?
I retrieved your wallet with all the money and...
Who here
a
plays
certain
Skyrim? I
Well,
imagine
yeah,
everyone here has
Liverpool
probably
is
played
my girl.
Skyrim at some point.
So what? Is it the difference of skin colour?
I'm not killing the lady who
Not
thinks she's
at
a
all.
vampire, not yet.
Good. Please, take this money anyway. To remind you to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, we did
Not
get a new hint for
everybody's as
Pippa Hawkins,
broad-minded as
so
you,
we can
Dr.
level
Reed.
her up and maybe make her blood more tasty. Your mediocre reputation.
Why do you have such a mediocre reputation among your colleagues, Milton?
Fuck them. Nobody knows the horrors I've seen since working here. This city was sick long before the epidemic, Dr. Reed.
I know it's a difficult task, but correct me if I'm wrong. Is this not the job you are paid to do?
I've seen babies left to die while their brothers were properly fed.
Do you not notice the
Underage
guy's
girls and
eyes? No
boys
one has
sold to
commented
all
on
manner
those.
of perverts.
I'm sorry, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, exactly. We lack words. So excuse me if I don't look on the bright side of life.
What'd that do for me? Alright, we only... Milton's actually not worth all that much. He's got one more thing we can do for him, and then he'll be fully leveled up. Milton... We'll probably want to eat both of them, since they are a couple. We don't want them feeling sad if we only eat one of them. So we'll probably eat both... I don't know, he's a trader. Do we really want to eat the guy who we can sell... He's a merchant. Do we really want to eat him? I don't know. I should send Fallout 3. I possibly could. I've considered it before.
What's going on between you and Nurse Hawkins?
Pippa's tired. Tired of all this shit. Tired of all those corpses piling up. She's as depressed as I am.
Bound by despair.
During the war, I witnessed a few couples just like you come together in difficult circumstances.
Not
It
Fallout
can be
3, I
very
mean Fallout
damaging.
4.
Maybe you're right.
Shit, what am I saying? Fallout 3 would
But
be
we
a
support
lot harder to
each
send
other,
than Fallout 4.
and that's all that matters.
Yeah, 14 million votes on a video with only 20,000 views. That's hard to believe.
You do realize you could both get fired. Hospital staff are not meant to have intimate relationships with one another.
Come on, Dr. Reed. Do you know how many rules are broken in this hospital every day just to keep it running? There's nothing wrong with what we're doing.
Alright, do you have anything worth buying?
I'd like to see your goods.
Wise choice, Dr. Reed. A reliable gun is what everybody needs these days.
Of course, I don't sell but with just the one gun. I just sell parts. I get around the gun ban, you see. I wish it would tell me how many of these I actually own. I only sells 2 bullets at a time. What the fuck is all that about? There's plenty of shotgun shells, though. Buy 6. Alright, we can now talk to the nurse lady. There she is. She's right over there. Found out about your boyfriend.
Good evening, Nurse Hawkins.
Good evening, Dr. Reed.
Pepper, I know you're very close to Milton Hooks.
Yes? Milton Hooks is my man. If you want to report
Can I
me for
please enable
just feel free,
subtitles?
Doctor.
Unfortunately,
I
I
have no
can't
intention of
because
reporting
I'm
this,
recording
Hawkins.
this, and those
But
would
are you
appear
aware
underneath
of
my own
risks?
video
The
subtitles in the
rules say I
video,
won't be allowed to work as
and
a
it
nurse
would
anymore.
cause problems. I can turn
But
the
here
game's
at
audio up,
Pembroke,
though,
We break rules all the time.
if it's actually
Is he
being a
worth
problem.
the risk?
Hey, I'm no perfect woman, and Milton is not the finest bloke. But we do our best to get by. That's all any of us can hope for
Mr.
nowadays.
Gamer, if my mod is telling you something, you should probably listen to them. And yeah, using all caps is generally considered bad form. Unless there's something you really need to get across. And even then, you should always reconsider it. So she's got something else we can learn about her and maybe get her up to full experience. But I'm really thinking of eating this lady. 2400 experience would be pretty good for me. That guy's worth almost nothing. Basically, the doctors are worth a lot. Patients are not worth that much.
Goodbye, Nurse Hawkins.
How do we actually... Do I want to eat... Well, we need to level her up some more. Let's go to the next district in Whitechapel. Maybe we'll find more, you know, people that are less sympathetic over there. Whitechapel scum. That seems like a better place to eat people. When I see buildings that have like interiors, like I kind of think I can go inside of them. But I think this game is one game where you can't always go inside buildings with interiors, and it's just there to make it look more effective. Well, the video game is supposed to be much lower than my voice, so you guys can hear me. But I will turn the game up if it's proving to be a problem. Just a second. This might make it more difficult to hear me, though. Keep that in mind. Alright, I turned it up 10%. Should be a little bit easier for you to hear now. Alright, there's a 10% volume increase. I don't really want to go too much further with it because then it becomes difficult to hear what I'm saying. Alright, let's go take care of this blackmailer. And continue to root around in people's garbage because, you know, when you're role-playing the undead, you gotta also play being a homeless person. Can't wait to, you know, as playing as Count Dracula, just start collecting cans. I understand there's like a plague going on, the Spanish flu, but would the streets of London really be this empty? Oh, wow. He's like level 18. Are you serious? I don't know if I can take this guy. I should be able to handle him. Just gotta be very careful. And I also gotta remember the stun block is, they aren't always stun block when I think they are. Give me the blood. It sounds like an I Am Legend. Whoa, what? Wet Boot Boys note. Concerning the recruitment of new boys in Whitechapel, I think I've found one Albie. He's as stupid as a stool, but tough. I asked him to prove to me if he could get some drugs for the black market and delivered quickly and nicely. Next time we meet, I'll tell him he's accepted as a wet boot boy, and we must now meet the bosses to get his orders. The wet boot boy is a gang name that is really difficult to say right off your tongue. Wet boot boy. That's something I will trip over nearly every time I try to say it. I gotta do something about this freaking... Maybe if I go to FXAA, it'll look better. And we'll set the view distance of that. Effects quality to high. Texture quality should be fine. Let's see if this screen tearing is just too much. It's driving me nuts. Can't tell if that guy is going to attack me or not. I mean, he did not notice the vampire battle going on right down the street from him. I think he's probably a bad guy. Yeah, these look like vampire hunters or something. I actually never say deadass. It's an insult I feel I should use more, actually. What we have here, governor. Not a whole lot of nothing. Game really needs a crouch button so you can actually sneak up on people. Oh shit. Missed that one. Give me the blood cloud. Please stop rapid fire shooting me with the revolver, which makes literally no sense. Yeah, gotta say, this combat system leaves a lot to be nope, god damn it, to be desired. It needs combos. That's what it really needs more than anything else. Good combos. I was trying to get in here. Looks like it's barricaded shut. You prefer the two-handed club? What weapons do I have? I haven't checked my weapon list in a while. Well, the most powerful weapon I have is the U scythe, but it's kind of slow. Common barbed cudgel is pretty good though. That's another two-handed weapon. Maybe I should switch to that. Now that's a proper fucking English fighting weapon if I ever saw one. I'll bash your fucking head in, you swear on me mum. Yeah, the up, down, left, right, A, B, 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 start. Wrong genre. Oh, we have this game is just telling me there's a parry, but oh, this thing specifically has a parry. Okay, I get it now. I thought it was just now telling me I could actually parry attacks. I was gonna be right and proper angry. Okay, he's resistant to whatever that stuff is. No, no, I wanted to stun him, not eat the rat. Luckily, he didn't hear that. Okay, the stun is pretty good. Eat more rats. Come back here, rat. Shit, it ran off. No, there's more. He really bites into those, doesn't he? He makes it sound like it's disgusting, but he seems to enjoy it a lot. Over there's
more and more of these bloody leeches every night.
Ooh, can I beat those guys?
But the guards recruiting more and more every day.
That one's they're level 11s.
When did you join the guard? 2 days
I have full blood now, so I might be able to do it.
See them fancy.
Give me that blood. Your blood now. Yeah, he's got a crossbow. Takes him a while to reload though. Did these guys conclude that I'm a vampire because I'm fancy? Probably because I looked at my eyes. That seems like a pretty obvious tell. Only these guys are apparently trained to do that. They're the only ones who can tell that someone has, you know, red demonic eyes. And only shows up at night. Maybe they just know who I am. Maybe they got a report or something. You really don't get a lot of experience from fighting people, though. The game really wants you to just eat people to level up. Oh, shh. Level 12. We might be able to beat this one. Ooh, 25 bits for Mr. Roboto. Wait a minute. Is this the same guy who voiced Detlef in The Walking Dead 3, or The Witcher 3, Blood and Wine? I have no idea. This is probably a bad idea. Ow. Yeah, that hurt a lot. No, this is good. I can take him. Well, I'm liking the game a lot more now that I'm just not talking to everyone, which is what I've spent way too much time doing. I like exploring the world and seeing what there is to do. But the combat is still janky as hell, though. That's never going to get better. Hello, good sir.
Ain't safe here for a gentleman. Go on, off you trot.
I like how they don't actually realize you're a vampire until you get close.
Better go home, sir.
Oh, he's a big one. He's got a name too. That can't be good for me. Take out the little ones first. Embrace the jank. That's pretty much what you have to do with a Euro jank game. You have to fall in love with it. Ow. You know what? You get a fucking... that. Oh. Give him the blood claw. That did not a whole lot of nothing. Him and his fucking shoddy. So you 25 bits, you made bacon. Well, congrats. I was actually thinking of making bacon earlier, but I didn't have time. Does anyone have actually a good brand of bacon they can recommend? Because I find that when I buy bacon, if I usually buy the same package, and sometimes the package will have really good bacon once you cook it up, and sometimes the bacon once you actually cook it up, for some reason it just cooks differently. I guess it's from a different farm in the way they raise their pigs or something. But I want something that's a bit more consistent, so I don't like waste money buying bacon that Oscar Mayer is the brand I'm talking about. That's the brand I buy. And half the time it'll cook up really nicely, and half the other time it'll come off as too dry, even if I cook it the same amount of time at the same heat. It's not Andrew Greenow.
I cannot enter.
Of course. Everything's always locked. Now I've made you want bacon. That is kind of always a want every human usually needs.
Whitechapel.
New hideout is
His
available.
neighborhood is linked somehow to the kind Lady Ashbury's blackmail. First, let's find this Petrescu fellow.
You get your meat from a deli? Oh, I wish there was a deli where I live. Not something we have access to, I'm afraid, here. Oh, what's this? Speaking of deli. What do I think of the music? The music's fine, no complaints. It's a very morny soundtrack, which I guess is appropriate. It's all violins and string instruments. Oh, he's already dead. Something bad just happened. It won't let me run too, so that's always a sign. What'd you do, him? Why'd you kill that dude?
I won't end up another drunk arsehole littering the streets.
Are you all right?
The bastard hit the wall next to me. I don't even know if he meant to miss.
If you've been hurt, I can help you. I'm a doctor.
Name's Albert. Remember it. Now bugger off.
The man you were looking for is dead.
I found the recruiter you were expecting. He's dead, but he carried a note.
I like
The Wet Boot Boys
Chris
have
Bacon as
accepted
well, but
your
not
application.
so not so much that turns the powder in my
I told you I was
mouth.
tough enough. I'll be free soon.
There's no freedom.
Free. You may soon find out that you have simply traded one set of shackles for another.
You're all fancy words, none of which concern me.
I want to actually buy
Don't
bacon
worry
that you
about
have to
someone
cut
else.
yourself. It's like
I'm
a block
fine,
of
I have a future
the
here.
wherever the bacon comes from, and you have to slice your own pieces off. I'm willing to wager that's like the really good bacon. Actually, you know what? I've read that the best bacon you can buy actually has mold growing on it. It's like been hung up in it's been pickled and hung up in like a shack for like a couple months, and there's like a layer of mold on the outside of it, and that's supposedly like the best tasting bacon. It's like aged properly.
Do you know Nurse Dorothy Crane from the Pembroke Hospital? If you know anything about her, I'd appreciate it.
Never heard of her.
Big belly,
She's
yeah, that's
pretty,
right.
I'll keep an eye out.
What happened? Did you really steal that
This is a
man's
bacon
medication?
stream.
Hey,
I can
didn't
get
do
behind that.
anything, It ain't me.
Dante, hello, dude.
All right. Perhaps the poor
It's a
drunk
huge
just
effort to cut it
confused
properly.
you
Yeah,
with
you have to cut
someone
it
else.
quite
Sod off,
thin,
mister.
but it's.
You ain't got no
I think it'd be
clue
good.
what's going
I think
on
it'd be
here.
worth it.
Bastard was a soldier in the war, so now he's got the right to shoot me.
It's true. I'm not familiar with this part of town. Perhaps you could help me.
I said sod off. Go find yourself another guide.
I'm not liking this. We could eat this guy right now. He's not worth very much though. He's fatigued. Wait a second. Oh, the situation in Whitechapel is like really serious. If we kill too many people here, it goes to critical, and then like all these people disappear. So it's a really weird situation we're in. Medical checkup.
Do you need assistance?
Please. Feeling tired these days.
I don't have any fatigue. I need to make some.
I will see you later. Goodbye, young man.
I won't end up another drunk arsehole littering the streets. Not me.
Is there a bench anywhere where we can craft some fatigue medicine?
Solid blood. What?
Shooting a boy in the middle of the street. Not the best thing to do, wouldn't you say?
What? You saw what happened. Who are you?
I'm Dr. Reed.
This
and
guy's
I'd like to
copying
ask
my
you a few
haircut.
questions, if you promise me to set your gun aside.
No. Look, I'm not a violent man. I'm Benjamin Palmer, doctor.
When the level is hostile,
No
not
one can
critical?
help me.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Not even you.
Do you know Nurse Dorothy Crane from the Pembroke Hospital?
What games am I
Have you
excited
heard
for at
anything? Funny,
E3?
I've been searching
Basically
for it too.
all of them at this
I need
point.
some pills.
It seems like it's going to be a great E3 this
Woman
year.
is a phantom, if you ask me.
Really? And why is that?
Word is she ain't real. She's a cover for some doctor who runs an illegal
Well, if you're a vampire, you're
dispensary
dead.
for
That kind of means you really don't have to worry about AIDS or any disease after that.
What can you tell me about this place?
Nothing to say, really. This is where I used to live, and this is where I live now.
You don't have anywhere to go. No family that would welcome you.
No one
Not
that would
since the
miss you
death
if
of
you
my
disappeared
wife.
off the face of the earth.
Albert Smuller. She was sick, you see. Long before the flu and all this shit.
You mean you used to have a better life?
Yeah, had a wife, a home, and a job.
Will I
used to
send
have a name. Now I've
Cyberpunk?
just been
Yeah, whenever it comes
in
out.
the trap.
I'm a big fan of Cyberpunk.
Perhaps you could focus for a moment and tell me your troubles.
I'm sick broke and my son just stole my pills. Everything's coming up roses.
You don't
What's
seem
wrong with him?
well, Benjamin. Do you need any help?
I always feel ill, sir. It's like I'm never right.
What's wrong with him? He's fatigued as well. They're not worth much experience, though. Neither of them, even if I level them up. Probably why you can just eat them without too much conflict. He's got migraines, the other one's got fatigue.
I will see you later. A gun, alcohol, and a bad temper make a terrible cocktail, sir. Goodbye for now.
This is such a weird chat we're having tonight. We're having conversations about bacon, now vampires and AIDS. Not that I don't like it. Sometimes, you know, chaos is the spice of life. It's just surprising. Whoops, shit. Give me the rat.
I have this thirst for blood.
Let's eat a rat. You're good. Hoping there'd be a workbench down here that I could use. Doesn't appear to be the case. I guess we continue onward.
It's locked, all right.
They really need to start cleaning up their streets. There's just dead people all over the place at this point. No wonder the infection is spreading.
All the good boys joined the army and the scum turned criminals.
There should be a safe house somewhere as well. Okay, the blackmail, that thing's right behind me. That's where I need to go. Let's look around first. Oh, more people to talk to.
The Swanborough cordial can be the answer to
She sells
all
medicine.
your problem.
Good evening, miss.
What do you want to
Good
bet
evening,
she's a
sir.
snake oil salesman?
Are you interested in a miraculous cure for this unknown and deadly epidemic?
Yep,
Actually,
snake oil.
I am.
Then you have come to the right place. The famous Swanborough cordial is all you need to help keep you in perfect health.
Oh, really? Why didn't I hear about it during my studies? I'm Jonathan Reed, by the way. Dr. Jonathan Reed.
Ah, my brother has spoken of your research, sir. I'm Loretta Swanborough, and it's always a pleasure to meet a fellow healer.
I'm looking for Nurse Dorothy Crane.
Do you know Nurse Dorothy Crane from the Pembroke Hospital? I'd like to know more about her.
I don't like to talk about competition.
Competition, you say?
Never met her, but it seems she provides some sort of medical care to the poor. The whole thing has to be some sort of scam, if you ask me.
I think
Tell
I'm
me,
definitely going to eat this lady.
Who intrigues you most in Whitechapel?
The region itself is something to see, but I would say Camellia the mute florist who gives away
You
her
searched
flowers.
up humanized bacon and got a bunch of MLP art. Yeah, you probably shouldn't look for humanized bacon. That I wouldn't search for that. I would not
What
want
do
that
you
in my
think of
search
the
history.
locals?
Most of them are afraid or desperate. They all come to me eventually for my remedy.
Is there anyone I should avoid?
Dartigan Bates, without a doubt. The bloody bastard remorselessly exploits poor migrants as soon as they get here.
Nothing from that. Okay, what does she trade?
I'd like to see what kind of medicine you're selling.
Swanborough Court, 35 shillings for that. It can be recycled into components, so it just turns into a lot of other stuff. I think I'm good with all this. I think I already got all the chemicals I need. Yeah, I'm pretty good at chemical-wise. Junk. Recycled into We might want to keep some of this though. Some of it might, like the ring is apparently belonged to Clay. Oh, Clay Cox. Didn't we kill Clay Cox? You might be able to find someone to give it to though. Recycling it might be better as well. I think I really don't think I want to sell any of that. He's worth a decent amount of XP. I saw someone else walking around up here. Oh, it's just that guy again.
Me, I'm not dying some piss.
50 Shades of Bacon. That's... I don't think that would actually make a very good book. Sex and bacon? I don't know. I think those two things should, you know, be kept separate. Call me old-fashioned. What the... Oh. Okay. What the fuck just happened there? Bizarre. The hell was that about?
As long as you have the money. When science fails you, this
Talk about
is
eating
you.
pork. Are people still watching Sword Art Online? I've always heard that's a garbage anime. Not that they're not all garbage already, but I've heard that people specifically hate that one in particular. Alright, we've explored enough. I guess we should go inside.
What do you want? Leave me alone.
That's a Life is
evening,
Strange
sir.
texture on that
I'm
door.
Dr. Reed. I'm looking for Nurse Dorothy Crane.
There is no Dorothy Crane here. Now goodbye.
I'm afraid this medical leaflet says the opposite, sir.
Really? Well, I'm afraid I'm going to close this door right now. Go bother someone else, Mr. Doctor.
To enter that house, I must discover who this man really is. Maybe I could start by observing what he's up to.
Oh shit, how'd he get that far away? He just closed the door.
A strange man was at the door with a pass for our medical facility. I refused him entry.
Darius, how could you know he didn't need our help?
His clothes were too finely tailored to be for Whitechapel.
Perhaps just a friend of that stray poet who is always about.
Richard Nithercott.
I heard of
not
sex
of the same
cells.
cloth, this man.
No, I have not.
I suspect some machination from that journalist.
Clayton Darby. Is he still asking questions?
Yes. I saw him drifting around St. Mary's Church. I swear he is tracking me just downwind.
Darius
I must talk to
Petrushika.
that journalist or the poet. They must know about Darius. Nearby the church they just mentioned.
Go to the church. All this, when we're a vampire, we could probably break in, but sure, why not? Let's play by the rules. I keep forgetting there's no jump button in this game. It feels weird. What is it with the games not really wanting jump buttons anymore? I wonder if these guys stay dead or they respawn. I'm actually very curious about that. Jumping was left behind in the PS2 era. It's starting to feel that way. Hello, Mr. Stuck in T-pose guy. Whoops. That was a barrel that got fucked over really hard. I think developers are getting rid of the jump button because it makes them design their levels a lot harder if they can't really control where you can go, if you can like go vertical. So a lot of them just limit you from jumping. It probably saves a lot of time on the bug testing as well, because jumping can also lead to a lot of bugs. I wonder if he'll actually spot me. Yep. Okay, yeah, that fixed him. Sorry, I was just kind of awkwardly standing there.
Step away, sir. He's mine.
You get a blood spear. And you get some... You get a club. Oh, it's a fucking ninja. Have I seen any movies lately? I have not. I have not had time for it. I kind of wanted to see the Han Solo movie just to see if it's apparently a very controversial movie.
It's locked.
So I usually like seeing those first before anything else. Just to see what everyone else is complaining about or defending. That box looks a bit too modern, but okay. So that's kind of the one I want to see currently. I'm waiting for a game to include the jump button as a microtransaction. Why does that keep happening? Okay. Fuck, that's really starting to get on my nerves. Maybe I have no idea what's causing that. Han Solo wasn't bad until the last hour, where there are a few major plot holes. I think you kind of have to go into a Star Wars movie expecting plot holes. Those are always present in those movies. Ooh, it's a level 12. Gotta be careful with him. There's more as well. Let's lure him away from his friend. Oh, I think I've seen the limits of the AI. This way. He literally cannot go past this barrier. Come on, come on. Come on, buddy. You can do it. I think I just found a way to cheese high-level enemies in the game. All right. Everyone in this game, every corpse has a cigarette case and a ring on it. These guys aren't so bad. Oh! I say as I get knocked on my ass. Maybe it's like in the 1400s where doing drugs and wearing a necklace or amulet would cure you. Well, that never actually cured you, but, well, technically I guess it would be a... What do you call it? Shit, that's a word I can always remember, but when I try to recall it, it's gone from me right now. Placebo, that's it, placebo. It'd be real nice if I could find a clear path anywhere in these streets. Because we apparently, as a doctor, can't hop over certain barrels. That's why they took the jump button out, so you can't do that. That's kind of lazy, to be honest. And this is also blocked off by barrels. There's a dude in there. Can I actually get in there? Not from here. I can warp up there. New weapon. A used hatchet. I've had one of those already. Oh, Matthew Conrad. Thank you for the tier 1 sub, dude, and thank you, Bane Wrecker, for the 25 bits. Can you smash barrels? Yes, but there's so far never been anything actually in them to make it worthwhile. All the stuff is in crates that you can, interact with like you just saw me do. There's a sound. That was a late-ass sound cue. But thank you for your first time subscribing, Matthew. Make sure you use those emotes you just bought, dude. Okay, it's a level 10 werewolf. Can we kill it? Yeah, we got him. How would you find its vein through all that mane of fur? Watery, sturdy, bloody sample. Watery, sturdy, blood... What was that mash of words? Why does this keep... Why does the game keep doing that? I'm going to end up losing footage in this game if it doesn't stop. I'm pretty sure I'm losing footage whenever that happens. Maybe I should set this game to... I think I'm going to have to, as a risk, set this game to windowed mode. That's really getting on my nerves. How do I... Well, let's turn full screen off. Maybe that'll help it. What is happening? Well, you guys aren't seeing it on your end, but what's happening right now is I'm playing this on my controller, and all of a sudden, all at once, the controller will stop working and the cursor will move straight up in the air, and the game will go back to my desktop, and I'll have to click on the icon again in my taskbar. It's not crashing, but it's acting really bizarrely. Try plugging my controller into a different USB port. But when it does do that, I'm pretty sure I'm losing footage every time. 25 bits from the Stony. Thank you. Playing this in windowed mode might not be the best idea, but we'll try it. Well, let's go back and try one more time when I was doing it full screen. Maybe it was just the USB was acting strange. It didn't do that last night though, so I'm really confused. taking forever to get around in this game, though. Oh. Ooh, level 12.
Stop now!
Let's lure this guy away from his friend. Oh, we can't. Oh, they are tough. Why is he spraying bug killer at me? Come on, freaking stamina. Oh, quit spraying me with bug killer.
Snuff it, leech!
I'll thank you for the bit. It just did it again. It keeps happening. Hey, Vsauce, Mystic here. Okay, I'm gonna have to play this in windowed mode. There's no... Either that or I'm not sure what's happening, but... Let me change my display settings real quick. Hopefully this won't crash the screen. Something funky is going on. I'm not sure what. Actually, I need to probably get out of the game and come back into it. That might help. But I'm not sure if I'm going to lose progress now, because I haven't... I'm guessing it's saved at some point by now, but... There has to be one of those stations I can save at, right? There's no fast travel either. That was all the way at the hospital. There's supposed to be another one here somewhere, but I never found it. It's probably around that where, and I just didn't see it. It's usually there's always usually one around the same areas. Mr. Dartigan, the game doesn't feel so good. Like I said, it's not crashing. It's just for some reason it's like it's minusing out to desktop. It's really bizarre. I'm hoping I don't have to go to a hideout to save the game. Because I'm gonna close the game and then come back into it because I have to do something about this. It's too much of a risk. I'm going to just end up losing a bunch of footage, and this is the worst thing. This is the worst type of game to have that happen in, because this game auto saves. You do not get to save this game at any time that you want. It does it automatically, and you only have one save file. Wanted to say great job on the new video. Well, thank you, Matthew. Thank you a lot. So if I end up losing footage, I can't actually just go back and see it again. So I'm gonna quit out of the game and come back into it and see if that fixes the issue. Let me change my resolution to... That way if I can play it in window mode, it won't look weird. Alright, now let's load the game up again. Wow, my desktop is... That game is fucked up my desktop. What the hell? Alright, let's load that up. You guys are only seeing black because I closed out of the game. Oh yay, and now OBS isn't going to register the game now that I've loaded back. Fucking god, so many problems tonight. You know what, screw it, we'll use display capture. What is this game and why is it so hard to do anything on it? There. Whew. Let us continue. Hopefully that solves the issue. Now, where are we? Oh shit. Well, okay, we're not too far from where we were. Still gotta find those two. Well, okay, we're back here at this place right after we fought right before we fought the werewolf. That's not too bad. Wasteland 2, I actually own the game. I just never have bothered playing it. I kickstarted that game, actually. Now let's see if the bug keeps happening. Okay, the werewolf stayed dead. That's good to know. Well, I haven't technically lost any progress. Not very much, anyways. Oh! Shit! What was the worst game I've ever played? I honestly can't answer that question because I don't know. It'd probably be like a really obscure thing that's just made to be garbage. No one knows about it. Probably the Total Recall NES game if I had to actually point one out. Ooh. You more of a boob or butt guy? No comment. I'd rather keep those personal details to myself. Thank you for the 25 bits though. Alright. So far, so good. Let's hope this continues to hold properly. This is where we were when we quit. Okay, who's closest? The 46 meter... One dude is 46 meters away, the other one's 76. We're gonna find both of them anyways. The eyes were pretty nice, not gonna lie. Find Clayton in the area. Unknown. Are you Clayton?
Excuse me, sir. I have a few questions for you.
Another journalist? I didn't answer
That guy looks like a Team Fortress character.
I'm not a journalist, I'm a doctor.
A doctor, you say? It's quite a rare breed in this part of town.
Really?
Is this game any good?
But still, here I am.
I'm souring on it currently.
Dr. Jonathan Reed.
Mainly because I'm having technical issues with it.
I'm Joe Peterson to some.
But the combat, don't play this game for the combat, play it for the...
For
wow, that sounds like a really stupid complaint. Don't play this thing for the thing that takes up over 60 to 70% of the game. It sucks. Combat is not good. And I think I'm going to have to say this game isn't that great, to be honest.
Have you heard of
I'm trying to be like mindful of it and what it's trying to accomplish, but so far I'm not exactly having a lot of fun with it.
Dorothy Crane. Yeah, I know her.
Yeah, this guy looks like the soldier if he lost like 100 pounds of muscle.
Could you please tell me more about her?
She's a nice girl. Tries to help the migrants. I offered to give her a hand, but she said my reputation would attract too much attention.
According to you, physicians are scarce in this part of town. Why is that?
Not familiar with this neighborhood, are you?
Imagine the boob rendering technology in Metro Exodus. That really depends on if they continue to use the NVIDIA exclusive tech they used in Last Light.
Totally.
The reason the boob physics were good in Last Light was because they used two different NVIDIA physics. They used NVIDIA physics and they used NVIDIA tessellization to make them look really realistic.
May I ask what you do around here?
That's why I always talk about when I say boob rendering technology.
Now sod off.
A lot of games actually don't really make use of the NVIDIA tech like that. This guy knew nothing. He's not very nice. We might end up eating him. He's worth a pretty decent amount of experience. Was it made specifically for rendering boobs, though? No, but you can use it for that. It's made for rendering
Mr.
anything you want.
Welcome, sir. Please, take a browse of my wares.
I'm Dr. Reed. I would like to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind.
Doctor? Interesting. I'm Barrett Lewis. Usually I don't have time to waste with talk, but at this hour of the night I can hardly refuse.
Questions, questions,
How is
questions.
business around here?
Business? I had no business. Between this racket, theft, and customers getting scared, I'm losing
You know,
money
after
every
playing
day.
Detroit and all the facial animation capture in this game, I mean in that game, going into this game where all the faces look kind of stiff and like they've all been injected with way too much Botox, it's kind of jarring. I think that game's facial animation kind of, you know, spoiled me a little bit. Yeah, this was made by the Life is Strange dev. Technically, they have two studios, one that makes action games and one that makes Life is Strange. This is made by the team that made Remember Me.
As a merchant, you see Whitechapel every day. Have you noticed anything out of the ordinary recently?
Well, you mean besides the epidemic, the war, and all the usual crap? As long as I can remember, this part of town has been a bottomless pit, and no sign of the bottom yet.
Violence is increasing in the borough.
Yeah. A few nights ago, some blokes jumped me. Came out of one of the condemned workshops. Fever, madness, something like that.
Where did this happen? Why did you go there?
In the closed workshops nearby. I worked there as an apprentice in better days. Now I only go to find trinkets or
Actually,
tools.
comparing this game has a
I was
lot of the
mugged,
same
though.
problems
There
that
was
Remember
money
Me
in
had.
that little
Wonky
box of
combat,
loot I lost.
great concept, but just poor execution.
Have you been hurt?
No, but that's only because I ran like hell. Those men were raving lunatics, I tell you. Not even able to speak anymore, just screaming.
I'm not really into either of those two people, Neptune. Not my type.
Have you heard of a nurse called Dorothy Crane?
Nurse Crane? So the bitch really is a nurse then? Always
What is
thought
wrong
she
with
was
that guy's
some
bottom lip?
crafty foreigner, that
Am I the
one.
only one that notices that? Sure, blame the migrants.
Yes. Those
My cat's
bloody
doing
immigrants
pretty
should
well.
know their
She's been
place,
playing
eh?
and annoying me as
How
much as
dare
possible
they do
today.
a better job than the lazy natives of this land.
Hey Chris, how are
Dorothy
you?
Crane ain't even a real name. Something like Dorothea Craniu. Something like that. Came to England fleeing the
He's
war, I
also
was told.
blinking light out of his eyeball.
why
If you guys
she
have noticed
irritates
that.
you so much.
Your precious nurse Crane gives away
He's got a LED
medical
light installed in
supplies
that
and
eyelid.
prescriptions for free. I offered to sell it for a fair cut, but no. Miss Crane wanted to play the quiet saint.
Do you need help, sir?
I only need you to purchase something from my shop, sir.
I think we've asked him everything. What do you got to sell?
Right then. Show me what you have.
Everyone's face looks like it was traveling towards Dishonored, but it got tired along the way. All of these shops sell nothing but like just junk. Sure, you'll do great business selling springs and broken bottles.
Hello, young man. I'm Dr. Reed, and I would like to ask you a few questions. May I enter, please?
Sorry, no, sir. My father does not like people entering our house, you see.
Let me in.
Your father is worried about you, boy. He asked me to look for you.
So my father actually worries about me then? Okay then. Come on in. I'm Harry, by the way.
Harry,
Even
go
my
Harry.
dreams are soaked with glue.
Don't mind me, I'm gonna rob all your shit before I talk to you.
Is there only pain and suffering in this world?
Wow, he is not a happy boy. The only pain and suffering in this world.
It's locked, all right.
Of refusal letter. Oh, that's not the right one. These guys have a side quest about trinkets or something. Okay.
It's locked.
What was my favorite game of 2017? Resident Evil 7. I'd have to go with that one. Wow, you guys are poor. You got nothing.
So, may I ask you a few questions?
I'm not
May I ask you why your hair looks so
could be
shit
worse?
and so terribly rendered? Yeah, he's worth almost no experience.
How do you feel?
I'm fine. I mean, it's not easy every day, but I'm fine.
He looks like he's wearing a wig, actually, the way that
tired
the
of
hair is
being sick
rendered
all the
differently
time.
with a different texture than the rest of his hair.
If only I could be
It's
tough.
really off-putting.
Well, you know.
Speaking of which, what can you tell me about your father?
My father is an idiot who makes idiot things. That's all I have to say.
Forgive my bluntness, young man, but you don't seem happy living in Whitechapel.
Why should I? I never wanted to come here in the first place. It was my father's decision. And look around you. Does this look like a nice place to live?
Giving me so many hints. You have a place to call home.
You have a roof over your head, a place to call home.
Graphics, sir. Can I
Many
have some
people
more?
here are not as lucky, you know.
That's exactly what my father says. Harry, you should be grateful for what you've got. But I wasn't even consulted
That's always a shit
when we
excuse.
moved here.
If life here is so terrible for
Oh
you,
shit, did we
why
just tell him to
don't you
leave?
just leave this place? Have you ever spoken to your father about it?
I don't go outside. It terrifies me so. I went outside once without my father noticing and I saw terrible things. Bloody and frightening things.
So that's why you stay at home all day?
Oh yeah, looking forward to a lot of games this year.
I'm not afraid of
Basically
disease or
everything that
death,
comes out
Dr.
starting in September.
It's the living I'm afraid of.
This is like the second half of this year is
Do you need
jam-packed.
any medical help, young man?
Yes, I do. I feel so tired.
We really need to
I
make a
don't know
lot
if
of
it's the
fatigue medicine.
epidemic, but everything seems so hard.
I've like ran into like 3 people who are suffering from fatigue.
I will see you later. Do you know Nurse Dorothy Crane from the Pembroke Hospital? I'd like to know more about her.
Yes, I know her. She came here to examine me when I was
I don't
very
think
sick.
Cyberpunk will be coming out this year, so
She said I
Anthem
should go
maybe.
out
Well,
more.
Anthem actually comes out next year, so that's not a thing either. We've talked to him. Oh, we're gonna get.
Goodbye, young man. Take care of yourself.
Even my dreams are soaked with gloom.
You again? What do you want this time?
About your boy.
How did you become the local bully everyone is afraid of, Joe?
There's no pride in roughing up poor bastards.
Will I send
this is
Last
the
of Us
only
2?
job I've
let me think about that one. Will I
pays
send
well, too.
the game
job.
everyone's gonna be
So
sending
you're
at the same time and
racketeering for
playing and
someone
was
else.
almost
I got enlisted
guaranteed
by the wet
to get a
blue
lot of
boys, a gang
views?
from the
Yeah.
docks. I'm their
I
muscle.
don't know. I might have to think about that one. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I'll be sending that game.
Most people don't become thugs when unemployed. This is a choice you made.
I don't care what you think, sir. I do what I have to do for my own reasons, and that's that.
I'm not sure Mr. Lewis would agree with your by all means necessary philosophy, sir.
Oh, do you really think he's the poor victim here? Barrett can be as sneaky
Yeah,
as
I'm not really
anyone.
that interested
Long
in
ago,
that
I even
Anthem
called the
actually.
bastard
It's
my
another.
best
It's a
friend.
Destiny clone essentially, right?
Harry doesn't seem happy living in Whitechapel. Why did you make him come here?
I've always put my son's interests above everything else. Whatever he may
Yeah,
think.
I'm not. That game doesn't really do
Our
much
house
for
is
me.
small,
And
but
plus,
affordable.
BioWare's
The walls are
stock has not exactly
but the door is
improved over the
solid.
past
You really love your son, don't you?
couple of releases. Nor has
He's my
EA's.
pride and joy. Even if he hates me for the choices
My
I make, he
sarcastic
pushes me
wit
buttons
makes
more
you
than he
laugh.
should.
Hopefully. I tend to think it usually falls pretty flat.
Since the criminal nature
At least
of
90%
your
of the time.
job means you could be arrested, are you not afraid of what would happen to your boy if you were?
No one will ever take my son away from me. If that ever occurred, I'd hunt the bastard down and rip off his head with my bare hands.
Do you have any regrets?
Only one. Not to have my beloved wife by my side. She died when Harry was little. My sweet Jane. She gave the boy confidence.
Goodbye, good sir.
Goodbye, Mr.
I've
Peterson.
learned where the other two guys are at. I need to find Nithercott and Darby. You learn anything from you?
Buying something, sir?
You never lose your focus, do you?
No, nothing new. Oh, shit, we're learning so much about these three people.
Joe Peterson.
My cat's doing great. She's just being quiet for a change.
Seem to know each other.
Wait till the end of the
I've known
stream.
Joe for years. I saw him box once or twice. He was a friend then. But these days,
Then
he's
she'll
just
make
another
noise.
thug.
What can you tell me about Mr. Peterson? Besides his behavior toward you, obviously.
Colossus Joe.
Is anyone paying attention to anything these people are saying?
Even. But after his wife
What's
passed
up, Dunk?
away,
It's me,
he
Markiplier.
found every excuse to stop
Wow, that's
training.
two
Just
famous
wanted to pick
YouTubers in
fights
one
with
comment.
everyone.
Without making excuses for him, it's safe to say that despair can poison even the sanest mind.
We've all had some rough times, ain't we?
No,
But
you
most
guys
of
are
us don't
like in
use
my
our
boat. You're just
fists
like
to
clicking
see
on
us
these
through.
and letting them like finish talking while you like twiddle your thumbs.
And no one has ever stood up to this thug.
Well, I kind of have to send the first Hitman before I do the sequel. Is there actually enough story in that game to send it? White Noise the game would actually be a pretty good description of all this right now.
Of Harry Peterson. The boy seems so fragile. Not like his father at all.
Harry's a good boy.
I'm just gonna have to start eating people out of frustration.
Complaining. He's had it tough, all right, but he needs to grow a pair.
What troubles him exactly?
Well, despite being his father's son, almost everything, I think. He never wanted to come to Whitechapel in the first place. Hates this place more than most of us.
We've learned a lot.
Goodbye for now, Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, the NPCs, they for a game that put this much work into the NPCs, they sure seem bland as all hell. Like every NPC in this game has like story and dialogue, but
May I come in?
Sure.
I don't know, none of them
Sure.
really seem that intriguing.
Even my dreams are soaked with
Even when we
glue.
learn about them.
So, may I ask you a few questions?
I'm not bothered. What could be worse?
We're just going back and forth as they're learning
And
stuff from
Mr.
these
Lewis
guys.
used to be good friends. What happened, Harry?
I was young then. I don't remember Mr. Lewis ever coming back again after my mother died. Or was it after my father started
I
bullying
should
him?
just eat everyone in
I
Whitechapel.
don't know.
But you are not responsible for your father's actions.
Am I not? Dad always says that he joined that gang for my safety. So if I wasn't...
Glade, you have not missed much.
People
Just us,
would be
you know,
worrying about
killing some,
Colossus
you know,
Joe.
zombie ghouls, and then currently we're in Whitechapel
Have you
looking for
tried
the blackmailer.
speaking to Mr. Lewis about it?
I don't go out often, but yes.
No, I don't plan to send Agony.
And he scolded me and
I don't
told
think
me
it's
to
worth
leave him alone.
the time. Apparently
I
not. It's
guess
not a
my
very good
father
game.
frightens him too much.
Plus, the amount of censoring I would have to do over the nudity for that video to go up on
Goodbye,
YouTube
young
would be extreme.
Take care of yourself.
Is there only pain and suffering in this world?
Question should be, is there only pain and suffering in this game? I need to eat rats to restore my blood. Give me rats.
This is despicable.
Hey, it's survival, dude.
I have this thirst for blood.
More blood.
This is despicable.
Oh, finally a safe house.
I cannot enter.
Oh, of course, it's locked too. Please tell me I didn't unlock additional dialogue just by
You
talking to
again?
the kid from these guys.
What do you want this time?
No, I think I'm actually done with them for now.
Goodbye, Mr. Peterson.
Let's go up the stairs and look for people. Oh, hello, ma'am. I thought she only had one leg. She's leaning against the wall.
Don't be shy, handsome. What can
Yeah, Agony is not good, guys.
I'm not looking.
It's one of those games that has really nice trailers, but the actual gameplay doesn't live up to it.
Questions, if I may. I'm a doctor, Dr. Reed.
All right then, but be quick. Though I usually get paid when I open my mouth.
Okay, Lady of the Night.
Christina, have you been examined? The epidemic is spreading fast in London, and you could be exposed. Or expose others.
Have we killed anyone yet? We haven't hunted down. We're still stalking our prey and leveling them up before we start harvesting the fruits of our labor.
Considering your line of work,
the people we have our eye on are kind of like the low life, so they're not worth that much unless you level them up first.
If it is going to happen, it will happen. Right now, I need money. That's what's important.
I need money for acting coach because my Russian accent is very poor.
You can put your own life in danger. That's your decision. But
it looks
what
like
about
Kate
your
Winslet
clients?
after years of hardship.
If you're contaminated, you will put them in danger too.
And you think that would worry me? If you knew the men I deal with, their health would not be what you'd worry about.
Tell me about yourself.
Are you joking with me? People
Where's
don't
Jacob and
usually
Bella?
come to see
Wrong
me
vampires,
for
dude.
conversation.
I have no interest.
To be honest, that would only improve this game at this point. That would at least be funny to laugh at.
This career.
Short story. The war,
Let it be known that this
exile,
game is starting to
and
prove that even gloomy
This country
actual
is not
vampires can be
especially
just as boring as
I've been refused
teenage
many
heartthrob
jobs
vampires.
Because of where I am from. I had few options left.
Why is it so hard to get vampires right? I don't judge you.
I always thought I was the master.
That's her hair, I think. It's actually hard to tell.
Now I know.
I'm pretty sure it's her hair, though.
Control over our lives.
It's just the weird lighting.
I don't judge you.
You know, this money is not only for me. I have good reasons to need this money quickly, but it is not your concern, Doctor.
Do you know Nurse
We didn't learn
Dorothy
much at all
Crane
from her.
From the Pembroke Hospital?
Preparing your cheer, puny mortal. I'm preparing it right now.
I don't know her.
Not just watching a
but
bunch
I
of
know her
ads.
name
Well, I
is
thank you for your
Dorothea
sacrifice, Mystic.
Crăciunescu. She came from Romania like me and many others.
You seem to respect her.
Dorothea helps the sick people of Whitechapel.
Blood Rain is your
Everyone should
oh wow,
respect
Blood
that.
Rain. That is a game I have not thought of in a long time.
Goodbye,
Wow,
miss.
that brings back some memories.
Take care of yourself as best you can.
Who among you has actually played Blood Rain? Aren't they rebooting Blood Rain? I'm not entirely sure. It'd be hard to. It'd be a hard sell. Do I watch JoJo Bizarre Adventure? No, I've read some of the manga though, but I don't really watch anime. Legacy of Kain and Soul Reaper, those are also good vampire stories.
Forgive my interruption.
Do not apologize, my son. Father Tobias Whitaker is always happy to teach mortals about the incoming Armageddon.
I am Dr. Jonathan Reed, and I just have a few
I didn't think Catholics were big up on the end days part of Christianity.
You are much more lost than I thought, my son.
I thought that was more of an evangelical thing.
Do you know Nurse Dorothy Crane? From
You
the
created
Pembroke
Blood
Hospital?
Rain. Impressive
I'd like to know
resume,
more
dude.
about her.
I don't like the liberal ideas of nurses, but I especially abhor that Nurse Crane you mentioned.
You don't like nurses?
So you're not exactly a fan of Florence Nightingale's work. But nurses are essential for modern healthcare.
Nuns should be the only women allowed to take care of male patients. It's obvious only they have the necessary moral fiber.
Why do you hate Nurse Crane more than other nurses?
Before coming
Yeah,
to
I've never heard
London,
of Catholics being
she
like
was a member
doom
of the
and gloom,
communist resistance
doomsday
in our
shit.
country.
Usually that's evangelicals
That's
or
what
like
happens
Christian,
when you
really,
let a
or
woman
Baptists.
get involved in politics.
This stream has surprisingly little delay. That's because Stream recently rolled out a new feature that lets you limit the delay by quite a few seconds, so there's not nearly as much delay as there used to be. I think it's only like 8 or so seconds at this point, if you have it turned on.
What do you mean when you say that I am more lost than you thought?
All scientists are entangled in a world of causes and consequences, and most of them can't see the plain truth.
Quite a judgmental opinion, if you ask me. But what do I know?
You thought the you
Blinded
fool
by
emote came
science
from
as I
Soul
am.
Eater.
But you
Nope,
are
that's
seeking
because
answers,
sometimes when I
aren't you?
screw up or die in games,
Answers
I
about
will
the
yell at
Armageddon
you,
about to strike the
fool, and
city.
it just caught on here on
Answers
chat.
about the hidden truth.
Well, I suppose I can spare a few minutes listening to your so-called truth.
As a doctor, you must be aware of the decimating epidemic. But let me tell you that this so-called Spanish flu is just the beginning of the end.
What do you mean?
The beast is finally
You know, this isn't actually the first game that was all about the Spanish flu. I remember there being a PS2 game that featured it as like a demonic created plague.
Those minions from the abyss.
How many views do I need to consider a video successful? That's hard to say because the amount of cash per mile, which is how many ad views you get and how much that's worth, varies per video. Some videos it needs a few more, some less, but usually all my videos always make a profit.
Really? And what would be your answer to this biblical threat?
We must
Generally, I
find
like
what
to see a
it
video
is
get at least
before this
50,000
outnumbers us.
views.
But not with scalpels and microscopes.
If we can get up to 100,000, it's even more.
What is left then?
Cleansing fire.
Not liking this preacher very much.
Tell me, Tobias, what exactly is your plan concerning the cleansing of this city?
God will recognize his own. More than once this city has risen from the ashes, hardened.
He's gonna burn the city down. Why is he telling me this?
Fire is just the instinctive answer of a caveman facing something he does not understand. This is the 20th century.
Your lack of faith is predictable. But my task is to convince rational minds like yours to see the light. This is God's
Yeah, I'll put
will.
Bayonetta 2 up again soon.
And dangerous. You're nothing but a soulless butcher. A small-time Torquemada. The Savonarola of Whitechapel.
Wow,
My
bringing out the
son,
big words.
If you think salvation is a free gift, go listen to the lies of that pompous fool, Joseph.
Joseph, a fool?
Vicar Larrabee of St. Mary's Church. While he continues preaching his fraudulent redemption.
Why he continues
more and
doing
more
the
people die
things
in the streets.
I talk like every other character in game where I don't want to emote. Oh, he's worth over 3,000 experience points. Who is he connected to? He's connected to no one, so killing him is actually a good thing. But he's got a really hard his mesmerize is really high though.
What do you mean when you say that I am more lost than you thought?
All scientists are entangled in a world of causes and consequences. And most of them can't see the plain truth.
Quite a judgmental opinion, if you ask me. But what do I know? Blinded by science as I am.
But you are seeking answers, aren't you? Answers about the Armageddon about to strike the city. Answers about the hidden truth.
Didn't I already... Is this the same conversation?
I am. But the answers I seek are based on facts, not superstition.
Yeah, we've already... Have you any family?
Have you any friends? Any family left in these?
Have I ever thought about posting any of my playthroughs? Not on my main channel, that would probably piss people off, actually. I've thought about at times making a second channel or making special content that like cuts it down to the highlights. But I usually just don't have time to do it. I like how the text on this one was so much that it actually doesn't fit in their little ribbon.
Where did you send him?
I sent Samuel to the Stonebridge Cemetery, where the pestilence and evil grows night after night.
You sent him on some preaching crusade during the epidemic.
What kind of game is Agony? It's mostly a walking sim in hell,
Samuel will
but it has
fear
some
no
gameplay
evil
elements like puzzles.
while he walks through the valley of the shadow of death.
Don't you fear getting sick yourself?
I've been touched by God's grace. I am perfectly healthy.
How do you
I've had enough
mesmerize
for
someone?
tonight. Goodbye.
I've kind of forgotten how to do that.
Excuse me, sir. Are you familiar with this part of town? Name's Clayton Darby, reporter.
Sorry, I'm new to Whitechapel. But perhaps you could help me since you're a journalist. My name is Jonathan Reed.
Dr. Reed, the famous surgeon. I'll gladly help if I'm able, sir.
About an underground. Before we get to the actual meat of the thing, let's get to know this guy first.
Why are the newspapers keeping silent about the Spanish influenza? It's as though
I think he meant cemetery, not
There's a
symmetry,
war going on.
which is a British way of saying
People
it.
shouldn't be demoralized by news of deadly diseases.
I served in France. Our top priority must be to put an end to this butchery. This war must stop now.
Sir, streets are a battlefield too. An invisible and untold war is going on, and it must be stopped.
Is it Lara or Laura? Well, it depends on how it's spelled. It's literally, if it's Lara, it's Lara.
What is a journalist doing in this borough after sunset?
He goes where none of his colleagues would dare to go, to inform the country.
So you risk your life to reveal the truth. I saw many reporters do the same during the war.
Whitechapel is the crucible of so many untold stories and
Open
tragedies.
Bob's and do Honey
I
Pop.
want people to know them.
Yeah, that game's actually banned on Twitch.
That's quite honorable of you. But is the public interested?
Not at all, sir. And that's why I'm an independent journalist, hoping to sell some stories.
Christina Popper claims she sells her body because she can't find any other work. Do you believe her?
Of course I do.
Why are we asking this guy about a
Her
prostitute?
story is exactly what I want my readers to understand. We live in an intolerant and divided nation.
Do you think things will ever change, Mr. Darby?
I believe the situation can only improve. And now that women can vote, I'm convinced things will change.
I'll see you later, Mystic.
Christina
shit.
Popper.
Same
Of
one.
course I do.
Do you think things...
I believe this...
Have you any idea of the danger
What's my
you
favorite
face in
game that
these
I've sinned at this
streets
point?
night?
I've had to
My
run
favorite
and
one to
hide
actually
more than
sin
once
was
from
Until Dawn.
frenzied
That was just a
mobs
really fun
incensed
experience because
by
it was the first
fever.
time I ever streamed.
Do you think the flu is really responsible for this, Doctor?
It's Laura in England. I always thought it was just Laura because, you know, it's spelled Lara. Kill him with a bag of fire lamps. This guy is pretty nice. We don't want to kill him.
I must confess, some of my rational views have been shaken by recent events.
I'll remember to stay away from the district's...
Like, I'm just looking for the actual main story stuff, but I can't seem to find it and talk to everyone else.
I heard you're investigating an underground medical dispensary in Whitechapel. What do you know about it?
Not much, I'm afraid. They are wary of strangers, and I'm not really an acquaintance of theirs. Why do you care?
Nurse is compromised.
I'm afraid one of the nurses from the Pembroke Hospital may be involved with unsavory activities.
Ah, could it be Dorothy Crane?
Without a doubt, you are a damn fine journalist, Mr. Darby. What do you know of her accomplice, a man named Darius?
I don't know much about the man.
I don't even remember
He's very
why we're looking for this.
cautious.
Oh yeah,
Never
the
goes
blackmail
out.
stuff. That's right.
Doesn't seem to have any friends or family.
No relatives.
He has no relatives at all?
No, except for that strange man, a poet named Richard Nethercott, who sometimes comes by. Darius would never let him in.
Where can I find this Mr. Nethercott?
He spends most of his time lurking around Whitechapel, talking to himself.
Plot
or
twist. There is no
declaring
main
verses.
story. That would
These
certainly be a
days,
twist.
You can usually find him behind the church.
He never goes out?
No. A few days
Just give it
ago, he
time, guys. Maybe it'll pick
unexpectedly
up.
did. I followed him, but it was just a ruse to keep me away from his house.
Really? How do you know?
He went to the nearest mailbox, but just before posting his letter, he ripped it up and threw it away.
Alright, I guess that's everything from him.
Mr. Darby. Farewell.
Alright, but now we gotta find Richard Nithercott and then find the mailbox and the letter. English names are funny. Nithercott. This guy seems really pissed off. Oh shit, where'd the third one come from? Find Charles Whippersnapper. Oh, the freaking lock-on stuff is such a dick. Will I be streaming tomorrow? Yes, I will. I'll be streaming basically every day until I beat this game. You're not used to typing on the PC chat? Oh, mobile user, I see. If you're looking for a game that features London, there's better games. I mean, it's still pretty narrow. It's London, but it's really only in the background. You're still on the very narrow city streets for most of it. Richard is in this area. That's probably him right there.
Good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Reed. I would like to ask you a few questions.
Please be my guest.
Yeah, Syndicate has a really good representation of London. The Getaway is a more forgettable one that came out on the PS2. That's also a modern London setting.
Are you an artist of some kind?
I'm a poet.
You don't really get to explore it, though. You just get to drive around in it.
At your service.
May I ask what you're doing at this hour of night, sir? Do you live here?
Not at all. I'm just enjoying the pleasure of a quiet walk. Though night talks are always preferable, if you ask me. Especially with strangers.
But are you not afraid of the epidemic?
Oh, why should I? I see some equity in the Spanish flu. No flesh.
Who wants to bet on how many games it will take until Dead Space 2 will be sent?
Good or evil, rich or poor, all are equal.
I'll be honest with you guys. I usually put Dead Space 2 up for vote when I know it's going to lose.
If you say so. But as a physician in a time of epidemic, I must caution you to avoid unnecessary exposure, sir.
Thank you, Doctor.
I still remember everyone being really weirded out in the Getaway by you heal yourself by leaning up against the wall. Admittedly, it was really stupid and really broke the flow of gameplay, but it was really good for memeing. Like, oh, I've been shot in the heart. Let me lean against this wall.
What are your thoughts on the terrible situation in this city?
Terrible, you say? No. Of course.
I still kind of like that game, though.
Death of so many innocents is a tragedy, but the scourge.
The worst part of that game was driving around the city and finding where you got to go just by using the tail lights.
London before the flu?
You didn't have a map or anything like that. You just had to watch your tail lights, and they'd indicate where you need to turn.
And now, listen to this oddly peaceful silence.
Peaceful. That's quite.
What is my genre of game? Action adventure is my preference.
And very inappropriate, I must say.
But basically anything with a good story
fail to understand
and characters.
I don't blame them. But how could I call myself a poet if I veil?
You fight vampires in this game. Well, we fought ghouls so far, which are like zombie vampires. Pronounced Mimi. I will never call it that.
Are you aware that your life could be in danger in this part of town?
But this is where I must be to feel the real beat of the city. I had to come, see it for myself, alone.
Send Fallout 3. I would probably send Fallout 4 rather than 3.
If some misfortune came upon you, who would be here to help you?
Well, you for a start, my dear doctor.
I understand your need for
Most sins I give in a game would be 13 across 3 videos.
I don't care. I don't have many friends.
I think it was like
Doctor,
400 sins
and
total
my
or something,
family
wasn't it?
despises me.
I think I've asked him everything else. Where is Dorothy
May
Crane?
I ask you a few questions about the district?
Extraordinary part of town, is it not? I'll be glad to help you if I can.
Though Dreamfall Chapters, I believe, is a single most sins I've ever given out in one video. I actually had to cut that video down a lot. It was originally 300 sins for that one game, and I cut it down to like 250 or so. I will not pronounce it meme. It's meme.
I'm looking for Dorothy Crane, a nurse who lives in this vicinity.
Dorothy Crane. Oh, I love the name. The Crane of White.
Can I just get to know people who want to suck dry? Well, you don't really know if you want to suck them dry until you get to know them. Otherwise, you're just going by like, that looks like someone I want to drink the blood of.
What can you tell me about an old man called Darius?
Darius Petrescu?
I don't know if I could send
Yes,
Fallout
I know
4 or
him.
not, but of the ones
first, I
of the
thought he was
Fallout
only a
games, that's
small
probably the only one I
publisher.
could.
I invited him to publish my work, but his reaction
No, I do not
was
watch
pretty
Infinity
clear.
War. I rarely have
Interested
time for
in your
movies.
talent?
Darius is an old political activist who takes delight in printing tracts and lampoons. Those
But this is
communist
someone I actually have to
activities
talk to.
only
These guys are
require
mission
mediocre
objectives.
writing skills.
Alright, we learned more about Darius Petrescu.
Do you need medical attention, sir?
It may be wise to let you prescribe me something. I don't feel like I should.
What does he need? He's got a cold. We've talked to just about everyone in this district except for these guys. We need to find... We haven't... Where did we actually find Darius Petrescu at?
I will see you later. I'll leave
The
you
Dreamfall
alone,
games did not do well, though, on the channel. They did not do well in the view department. We still need to find the mailbox and the letter now. Those were, to be perfectly honest, if I'd known those videos would end up being as long as they were, I probably wouldn't have sent it. Small bouquet, flower bouquet, with a voucher for a free medical checkup hidden between the flowers. Will you send Dead Space 2 eventually? Do I know you?
Good evening, miss. I'm Dr. Reed. I'd like to ask you a few questions. I know what you're thinking. A tall stranger who meets a girl in the street at night. It reeks of the penny dreadfuls. But I mean you
With,
no harm.
red bloodshot eyes and veins on his face.
Camellia, I know you work for Dorothy Crane. Please tell me about her secret dispensary. A stubborn and mute
She doesn't talk, does she?
Nurse Crane and Darius Petrescu have been clever.
Is she mute?
I know you understand what I'm saying. Your silence has nothing to do with you being mute, does it?
The music is so loud you can barely hear the dialogue? Weird.
You don't seem to need my medical attention for now.
Oh, that was an interesting
Very well.
conversation.
Goodbye then.
Mailbox should be over that way, over here somewhere. Yeah, I know about the flower bouquet. Darius Petrisu's letter. My dearest, most beloved children, I am so sorry you have not heard from me for a few months. The situation in London has been difficult. I know it may sound selfish and silly when you, my children, are still living in a country consumed by war. But there's also a war going on here in England, a war against poverty and against injustice. This is a war I intend to fight despite my advanced years. This is why I'm writing to you today. I won't be coming back to Romania. That probably means I won't see you again before I die. Don't be sad, my darlings. You are grown up now, and you have children of your own. You know the sacrifice we sometimes must accept to make the world a better place. This is one I must make now, to feel useful one more time. I wish you a long and happy life. Kiss my grandchildren for me, and remember that your father loves you all the way from his cold, damp country. I'm ever loving your father, Darius Petrescu.
The content of Darius' letter to his children could give me more leverage to enter.
So can we finally get inside that place?
Mystery now. It should not be that difficult to incite him to let me in.
Apparently so. He's way over here, though. You're waiting for me to send The Last of Us 2. Well, the game has to, exist first.
Good evening.
Oh yeah, you're the
Change your mind,
Lady of the Night.
Mr. Reed?
Clayton Darby claims he will expose the crisis in Whitechapel to all of London. Do you believe him?
You never heard of a Remember Me until my
Clayton's
video on it?
courage
It's kind of
will
obscure.
erode with time,
So that makes a lot of sense,
until he
actually.
finally leaves Whitechapel to start another fight somewhere else.
Are you talking from experience?
I've seen your type come here to get a good fuck in a cheap room or a dark alley before going back to their fancy houses in the West End.
I assure you, madam, I'm dead. I don't need that anymore.
Why this skepticism?
How can you speak about starvation if you've never been hungry? Or about poverty? Or anything else you have never suffered from?
Goodbye, miss.
What a great
Take
conversation
care
all
of
these people make.
yourself as best you can.
Yeah, I think Remember Me and, the Dreamfall games are the ones people didn't really know much about until I send them. Can I eat one of you guys? Some of you are worth a decent amount of money.
You again?
How much are you worth?
What do you want this time?
He's worth a lot of experience. And we'd be freeing his son, too.
Can I offer you my medical
Shit, wrong button.
expertise, Mr. Peterson?
The name is Colossus
No, you
Joe.
get experience for eating them.
I don't get sick.
How do you actually do that, though? Left bumper doesn't really do... I guess I can't mesmerize him since my level is too low. That's why it doesn't work. Star Wars Unleashed? I'm not sure.
Goodbye, Mr. Peterson.
I have to find someone who I can mesmerize. These people are like they're too mentally fit. What I need to find is the freaking safe house so I can level up my abilities. I don't know where it is. There should be one around here somewhere. Oh, there it is. There's the hideout. The safe place. Let's go there. I need to level up. I got 2,000 experience I can use. There. I'm guessing that's it. Also need to craft some medicine for all these people I'm talking to. That way they'll be their blood will be worth more. Where's the workbench? Wow, how do you actually die in that position? Wow, that's so... But you think they would have cleaned this place out before declaring it condemned. Alright, here we go. That's what I needed. I have this sort of deadpan voice that makes me always sound sarcastic. I love it, but I would think outside of videos it causes some confusion in conversations. I've never really had a problem with it. Okay, we need like 2 treatments for fatigue, because I saw at least 2 people that were fatigued. I think I saw someone else who had a cold. I'll go ahead and make a bronchitis cure in case I run into someone. There we go. I'll see you later, Fall into Fantasy. Nothing to analyze. Alright, let's level up. What is out here? Oh, that's the exit door, right? I actually think I had migraine stuff. Okay, we have 2,000 points to spend. That's enough for a decent level up on something. I'm not really sure what would be best. Maybe more body condition. 100 plus health would be nice. How much does that cost? 600, that's actually pretty cheap. Imagine if a game director watched my sim videos. Well, I imagine by just the sheer amount of total views I've had, there have been some, you know, small-time directors who have probably seen it. We'll go ahead and grab one more of these. And stamina. What about stamina? Probably need to increase our blood capacity as well. We don't really need abilities, we need endurance right now. This is how much. Increase your blood absorption when using bite. Yeah, we'll grab that. I would love it if David Cage watched one of my videos and commented on it. Increase your life regeneration when using bite and that's not really a very good heal though. Yeah, I don't think we have enough experience to buy anything else now. That was some pretty good buys, though. That should make us a lot more durable in combat. The following night. All right. Let us now go finally into that ladies' clinic. Does the game have something like Mass Effect's Renegade? Well, there sort of. You get to choose which NPCs you kill. And that can change how the world reacts to that. People will have different things to say, and the levels themselves will get harder for you the more people you kill in one district.
should never have taken up my father's business.
Alright. Finally, we should be able to get inside here. Look at the freaking Life is Strange texture on that door. That is straight from Life is Strange.
Go away.
Let's have a man-to-man talk.
Sir, wait. Stop this nonsense. I know Nurse Crane is here. Shall we speak man to man, you and I?
All right. Speak up.
Don't you see we're on the same side? We fight to help the poor, sick, and abandoned.
I'm nothing like you, Mr. Doctor.
Yes, you are. You too believe in providing medical care without charge. You know what we have to sacrifice.
If you guys want a vampire simulator game like Cyborg just mentioned, start playing Masquerade Bloodlines. Much better. Still has janky-ass combat, but the actual characters you meet are worth the time it takes to talk to them. And the mission designs are awesome. Has a pretty stupid ending, though, in the game. It's not without its faults, but it's actually way more interesting than so far this game has been.
If you want to talk to Dorothea, you must go across the courtyard and take the stairs.
We've not been formally introduced. May I ask your name and occupation?
Panda, usually people just vote on the comments of the video.
To keep snitches.
That's where I always look. That's where I always count them at, anyways. So that's where it matters.
And I also run this little print shop.
So Dorothy's real name is not Crane.
Like myself and many people in this area, Dorothea is from occupied
Yeah, so far this game I would say has been kind of a
all you need
disappointment.
to know.
I had such high
She
hopes
seems
for it.
important to the
I was hoping for something that
More than
reminded me
you
of
can imagine.
Bloodlines, Masquerade.
The West End does not want to hear of Whitechapel's
Patreon. No, I don't have a
misery.
Patreon.
Dorothea is one of the few doing something about it.
I should probably make one, though.
Tell me everything.
I'm just
you
kind of
know
hesitant to
about
do it.
Camellia, the mute florist.
I do not
Yeah, the trailers
believe
for this
in
game
the
were awesome looking.
afterlife,
That's what
Doctor,
had me excited
but
for it.
I'm almost convinced Camellia is an angel. She volunteered to give out our medical
But like I said,
leaflets.
trailers are made to fool you.
Are you not worried for her safety?
She is as brave as she is tough, and clever too. If only I had met her when I was younger.
Are you in
Ugh.
love with Camellia, Mr. Prochaska?
It seems like
Don't
it's
be
really
stupid.
slow making any progress
If
in
I
this
had
game,
met her
too.
when I was younger, we could have won our revolution.
I mean, I'm still in the same mission I started tonight's
Do
stream
you
on.
know where she's from?
She's not from around here, that's all we know.
New York, I would say yes.
Camellia
I would
is
wait for
not
a
even
sale
her
in this game, to
name.
be honest.
It's her favorite flower.
You say she has no.
Well, yeah,
close
setting a
family?
Patreon up is easy,
there's
but
that awful
picking what your
poet who
rewards are going to be,
constantly follows
that's a
her
bit more
around
difficult.
like
You
a
gotta
lost
choose that
puppy.
properly.
A good man for sure, but a very poor writer.
Tell me everything you know about Camellia, the mute florist.
I do not believe in the afterlife, Doctor, but I'm almost convinced Camellia is an angel. She volunteered to give out our medical leaflets.
Tell me everything you know about Camellia, the mute florist.
I do not believe in the afterlife, Doctor.
Alright, he's not gonna
but
answer
I'm
that.
almost convinced Camellia.
How did you meet Nurse Crane?
How did you meet Nurse Crane, Darius? Why does she
Yeah, like I said, if you guys want a cheap vampire game that is basically this game, but far more interesting, get Vampires the Masquerade Bloodlines.
About the country we left.
Stupid name
You
for that
mean
game, but
occupied
it's,
Romania, don't
I would
you?
say, definitely better than this game.
Even if
Still
not
has
directly,
janky combat, though,
I fought
but the story and
against your
characters are
Really?
excellent.
Then perhaps you have more in common with Dorothea.
To be
than
honest,
the
for a
eye
game that's like
doctor
over a
did.
decade old, it actually has better facial animation, too.
I know you fought for your country when it was occupied, Darius. Tell me more about it.
I know my days are numbered, and I know I won't see my homeland again. But I
This game is
fought
like
for
DLC
Romania
for The
all
Sims.
my life.
I don't know what it
And
is
I
about
will
Don't
until
Nod
my
and their
last
character
breath.
development, but their
Romania escaped
characters
the
always
grasp
look
of
like
the
Sim characters.
Austro-Hungarian Empire. It's a
There's
free
my cat.
country again.
But it's not the
I don't know
country
why,
fought for.
what it is with their
My
artists or their
homeland
engine,
is
but they
not
always have this
appeased,
weird
Doctor.
Simish look to them.
And I still see a dark future ahead for my people.
Yeah, I'm
Goodbye,
done.
Mr.
Let's go talk to the lady. What do you want, kitty? Antique figure, new collectible. Sweet.
It's locked.
Yeah, it can be a pain in the ass to get Masquerade running, but there are fan patches for the game that make it a lot better. People love that game so much that fans actually patch it when the developers stopped. It's just a sad thing that that game never actually... They never managed to finish it and make it as good as it could have been. GOG version runs without a hitch. Well, that would be the GOG version, yeah. GOG always makes sure the games work properly. Alright. Finally, we're in this place. I really want to stream that game, actually. You do quests and you question them and you level them up, and then they're worth more experience when you finally decide, if you finally decide to eat them. But to level up one person, you also usually have to talk to other people and get hints, and so you're leveling up multiple people at a time. Panda, thank you for the 100 bits. Progress. Yeah, my cat is like falling off tables and shit. I've never seen a cat more clumsy than Dex. I don't get it. Wish I could just eat these people. You can only sleep with my voice. Damn, dude, that's high praise. Thank you, Baja, man. See you tomorrow as well, dude. Oh, what is she doing with her hand? I don't think I really want to really go over there just yet. That seems kind of awkward and intimate.
I need help.
Yeah. Okay, she is holding him down. It looked like she was pulling him up by his short hairs.
What do we have here, nurse?
Patient Raz Van Vasily. High fever running on 3 days. Complaints of dizziness, muscle aches, and head pain. Diagnosed with influenza.
Treatment?
Aspirin and salicin for the fever and discomfort. Liquids for dehydration, but he's having trouble keeping even water down.
Where are the quinine salts?
Aspirin and salicin, you say? Why not some warm milk and a kiss on the cheek? Where are the quinine salts?
Tried buying, borrowing, even stealing. There's none to be found, Doctor.
He's not convulsing, he's choking. He's not getting any air. Scalpel! Hand me that scalpel!
Oh, tracheotomy, this dude.
What can I do, Doctor?
Yeah, tracheotomy. Do we have any anesthetics?
It's too dangerous to operate with these convulsions. Sedative, nurse. Do we have any anesthetics?
I'm sorry, Doctor. None at all.
Well. Do it anyways.
I need to perform a tracheostomy. Short pipe. That rubber tube will do. We're going to cut a passage for air through the neck.
Yes,
this guy's going to
Doctor.
die of infection.
He's breathing again, but he's coughing up blood.
Internal hemorrhaging. I need to make
Shame they
another
can't show
incision
this.
into
It
the
would look
chest cavity
far
to
more
drain
interesting if
fluids
we
from
could
the
see what's
lung.
happening.
Prepare another tube.
A thoracostomy. Doctor, we've nothing to fight the infection. We need an aseptic environment.
Did you suggest then?
Right then, Nurse Crane. What do you suggest we do?
I've no idea. I'm not the doctor.
Time is of the essence. We need to perform a thoracic drain.
Yes, Doctor.
Wait, is that an EKG or? That's the beeping sound of a heart monitor going off. They wouldn't have this right now.
I'm
You guys,
losing his pulse.
or I guess that's part of the
drain must have
soundtrack.
punctured the intercostal artery. There's too much blood.
Are you all right, Doctor?
I can't see.
Just getting hungry. I must suture the artery. Let me finish it.
I must first suture the artery. Find the wound. The source of the blood.
Needle and thread, Doctor.
Good. The stitches are holding. How's he doing?
We're losing him. We've lost his pulse. He's dying, Doctor.
Cardiac massage, or
Cardiac massage, now.
Cardiac... What? Are you making this up as you go along?
okay. I'm not a Dr. Jim, I'm a vampire.
We've lost the pulse. He's gone, Doctor.
Yes. We did everything we could.
Truly? Everything you could. Is that how you'll report this in your log? Is this how the war went? Piling up one poor corpse beside the next?
This was not an influenza-induced seizure. I've never seen symptoms like these on the continent.
Neither have I. But the previous symptoms leading up to this attack were the same, indistinguishable from the epidemic.
No. There was something more vile in these reactions. Something primitive.
Yeah, the soundtrack had the beeping in it. They didn't actually have a heart monitor here.
That accompanies the flu itself, Doctor.
Yes, but I'd best take some samples of the blood for analysis.
And for a midnight snack. They really don't want to animate him doing anything with that body, or at least show it on screen. I wonder if I could have actually saved that guy.
You're here to test my bedside manners.
I'm curious about that.
It's locked, all right.
I owe this courtesy.
You can't reload in this game, guys. It auto-saves.
Place for the I suspect it was more than intuition alone that led you to us. So, how might I be of service, Dr. Reed?
Yeah, what do we know about... Whoa, she's worth a lot. Well, there's actually more that's worth. She would have said there's no in nephroprene? Yeah, probably. I've come to stop the blackmail.
I've come to put an end to this insufferable blackmailing, Dorothy.
Doctor, you think your warnings scare me? I've stolen and plied, blackmailed and lied, but what else am I to do? I'm all these people have.
Why target Lady Ashbury?
But why Lady Ashbury? Why her, of all people?
She's pristine and proper, all right. But that she-wolf in sheep's clothing murders the poor for sport. I have her where she belongs, and I'll milk her for all she's got.
Why not trust Dr. Swansea?
Dr. Swansea is a sensible and honest man. He wouldn't have refused your friend's care at Pembroke.
It's easy for you to say, Doctor. These people cannot go to the police, nor to the hospital. They don't even speak English. They depend on me for everything.
So, the end justifies the means. Is that your defense?
We actually could drink her.
You
can actually drink these characters.
Just another fine-heeled, silver-spooned gentleman who was given the world on a platter. You know nothing.
But her
of
mental
poverty,
fortitude probably wouldn't let me.
Nothing of the shame, the hunger, the loneliness.
You've convinced me of the sincerity of your actions and their noble justifications. But all the same, blackmail is a crime, and it will stop, Nurse Crane.
So, are you going to turn me over to the authorities?
We can actually kill her right now. But that'd piss off the lady. She wanted us to make sure this lady lived. Spare. I'll look away. I look away, but you resign. Or we can make her forget all about this. Resigning means she won't be able to help anyone anymore. So we'll charm her.
Listen very carefully, Dorothy. You will erase from your memory everything you pretend to know about Lady Ashbury and Pembroke Hospital.
Let that rich bitch off the hook over my dead
Nurse
body.
Crane, enough. Listen as if your life depended on every word. I know you've a generous heart who gives freely to those in need, but you shall walk away from the shadier streets of your business.
I will never abandon...
Dorothy, the discussion has come to a close. Your clandestine activities in the Resistance are over. Let it go.
I'll let it go. Yes.
It was hardly a magical charm.
All gone.
Not exactly a neuralizer. Well, that raised our mesmerize level too. That's actually good. We needed that. District will soon suffer the... Why would the district shouldn't soon suffer any consequences from this? He's just not blackmailing someone anymore. But we didn't make her resign and we didn't kill her. That has to be very minor consequences, or I'm going to be very upset.
It's locked, all right. It's locked.
Okay, report to Lady Ashbury. Alright, we finally completed one mission. Oh shit, mission tonight.
Oh, this one stinks already.
Okay, these guys just broke in and started killing everyone.
Don't like that, do ya?
Oh.
Murdering bastard! Watch it!
That was bizarre. It's like, we need some combat. Player's been talking too much for a while. So, well, they just killed everyone inside here. That'll probably have some consequences. This is like an illegal hospital, so yeah. I'm not really going to answer a question about feet sucking, dude. Sorry. That's a bit odd. But yet, it's pretty obviously, yeah, there's a fetish for everything, though. That did a whole lot of nothing.
It's on him! It's on him! He's too fucking fast! This one's mine!
Thank you, invincibility frames. Did they kill the old guy in the building? I'm going to be very upset if they did. It means I can't drink him. I'll see you later, Panda. I'll be streaming till around midnight, so you still got some time to catch up. Make sure we unlock these gates. Have I ever considered sending Dark Souls?
Hello,
I don't
Mr.
think I can send that game. It's
Dr.
mainly...
Reed.
There's no real
Come
characters
on
in the
in.
game. It's all lore and then boss fights. I don't know how I'd make that work.
Yes?
Everyone's dead in there except for the lady.
Goodbye, Mr. Petrescu.
The combat in this game should remind you of Remember Me. That's exactly what it feels like. Yeah, I got drugs for these guys. I can heal them now.
Good evening, Benjamin. Can I help you?
I'm afraid not, Mr. Reed.
You don't seem well, Benjamin. Do you need any help?
I always feel ill, sir. It's like I'm never right.
Oh, I didn't get the migraine shit. Well, I got something for the other guy. Never mind.
I will see you later. A gun,
Yeah,
alcohol,
in Remember
and a
Me,
bad
you had a
temper make
combo editor.
terrible
It wasn't very
cocktail,
good though.
sir. Goodbye for now.
Why is that tree flashing?
How are you, boy?
I'm not your boy, all right? Now piss off.
Wow.
Do you need
I want to give you these drugs or
Please.
not?
Feeling tired these days.
There you go. Let's hope nobody steals it from you.
Very funny.
I could actually mesmerize. He's not really worth much just yet, though. Let's let him heal up. Then he'll at least be worth 1,000 once he's fully healed, or we do something else for him. He's still recovering from no blood loss. He's still recovering, though.
Goodbye, young man.
Let's go talk to the lady. We have a long journey back, though.
It's locked, all right.
How long is this game? I've heard around 20 to 25 hours, but it's longer if you try to do all the side missions, as always. Which I don't plan to do. No, this game would be far more frustrating with a time limit. There are a few games that are actually made better by a time limit. I don't know why anyone ever asked for that.
I have this.
I don't think you can eat every character. That's actually... You can't really do that. Once you kill too many people in a district, the district apparently goes crazy, and then like everyone leaves. And then you don't have access to them anymore. So it pretty much prevents you from ever eating too many people and over-leveling yourself.
Human blood. Whoever left these marks did so deliberately.
Interesting. We have a mystery afoot.
Kill it, boys!
Oh, they killed a... What is that? They just stuck through the ground. Whoa, what? Toby Sheen and Vincent Sheen.
Leech, boys!
Kill the small ones first.
Doesn't like fire, does it? Let's pin it down!
Oh. Oh, that guy's another one. Oh, shit. Kill the small guy. Dead Rising. Dead Rising, I still actually feel the time limit isn't that great in that game. Alright, now we can take care of these guys. Oh shit, I need to heal. This is not easy. This guy really needs to die. Okay, there's one down. They just keep summoning more dudes, don't they?
Burn it, boys! Die, vermin!
Fuck off, little NPC dude. What was that all about? Just a random boss fight in the city streets. They didn't have any items I can loot. That was... Okay, sure. That's just a thing that can now happen. They staked a giant rat to the ground. We got a watery, sturdy blood sample from it.
See them fancy clothes? It's what I do!
I have this thirst for blood.
I don't know what's going on out there. Which one of these? I guess I don't have the thing for... Yeah, I don't have cures for migraines yet, or headaches. I need to find the medical stuff for it. I don't really need to level up yet. I only have 1900 experience.
This is despicable.
Who the hell is getting their ass kicked over here, though? That I'm curious about. More of a pharmacist than a doctor? You're not wrong. Oh shit, that's a lot of dudes. How about no? Okay, we're back at the hospital. Thing good here? Apparently so. Wow, he's not worth anything. The patient's here anyways.
I cannot enter.
Door's locked, but I definitely just got inside.
This hospital seems to be
Guess she's outside. Bright white lights. Sure, whatever that means. I can't help but think that's a remark in the lighting engine in this game, which is kind of primitive. Sorry to interrupt. Could you make it more obvious?
I would ask you to avert your eyes, sir. Or did you not know it was rude to stare?
I knew it.
Speak up, Dr. Reed. I like a man who speaks his mind.
He trusted you.
You killed him. He trusted you. And you killed him.
Spare me your sarcasm, Jonathan. You are but newly born in this world.
So the accusation was true.
So in the end, the accusation was true, wasn't it?
The situation is somewhat awkward nonetheless. I have not been observed sustaining myself for many decades. I have to say I'm a trifle embarrassed.
Anyway, I have concluded my inquiries concerning your blackmailer.
I see. Please excuse my agitated state. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't let anyone see me in this condition.
The case is closed, your ladyship. The person who took advantage of you has, shall we say, seen the error of her ways.
So who was it?
My lady, the blackmailer was dealt with using the utmost discretion. The culprit's identity is of no relevance.
Thank you, Jonathan. That is exactly what I needed from you. You have proven your loyalty, so, as a friend, please accept this small token of my appreciation.
Thank you, my lady.
Just 50 shillings.
If you have an inclination to learn more about vampires or your current situation, I will be glad to aid you in your quest for knowledge.
Sure. About me.
I don't understand.
I bet
Why
she's the
was
one who
I
actually turned us. We'll
created
find that
and
out
then left
eventually.
for dead?
That is a question only the one who made you can answer. It's not normal practice. I doubt even if you find him, he will answer you, considering how cruelly he treated you.
How are vampires created? What's the lore here?
I'd like to avoid creating another vampire by mistake anyway. Tell me, how is it done?
The process is dangerous. It could even kill your potential progeny. If you did decide to sire an offspring, they must drink of your blood, Jonathan.
Classic way. That's what I was hoping for. Straight up classic way of making a vampire.
So me being a vampire could have been a mistake.
I very much doubt it, Jonathan. Contrary to the legends, it is not as simple to make another vampire by just biting someone.
The voice in my head.
I've been hearing a voice talking in my head. Is this some kind of insanity? It feels like the voice of the vampire that created me.
Hush. Tell no one this. It would be unwise to talk of such things amongst British immortals. Speak no more of your maker.
Why just British immortals? That seems kind of strange. How could this cause offense?
How could this cause offense?
Only the powerful immortals can mentally call to their progeny. No vampire or hunter will sleep easy, knowing that an unidentified elder is stalking the streets of London.
Are you my maker?
Excuse my forwardness, but are you my maker?
Me? Goodness, no. Only a foolish immortal would create a progeny without taking precaution, and I'm no fool.
Am I a vampire? Shouldn't you know the answer to that?
A vampire? Is that what I am? What we are?
Such a crude word, defined by penny dreadfuls and drunken hacks. No. You are now an Ekon, and that you shall remain.
A what? An Ekon. That sounds made up.
So we are Ekons. How can I identify us amongst other vampires?
How to put it? All Ekon are vampires.
I don't really expect
But all
Red Dead Redemption 2 to be a
vampires are
disappointment.
not Ekon. We are but a branch of the immortal tree.
Wait, there's like, are there like vampire clans? Is that what she's saying? The Ekon clan or something?
Are you an Ekon too?
Yes, I am. We are the closest thing to what man refers to as vampires. Forget what you think you know about us.
That's straight out of Masquerade, if so. Zero Domain, how are you?
Why does Dr. Swansea allow you to feed on the patients of the hospital?
Dr. Swansea is a good and compassionate man. He is trying to find a solution for our...
Better than being an Akon and have your hip-hop
Until
thing
that
die out
happens, he is
quickly with
clever
shitty
enough to
music like
understand
Smack
that
That.
I only feed upon the dying.
And no one suspected you of the murders.
As you well know, suspicion has recently fallen on me of killing for pleasure.
So are we playing not Vampire the Masquerade? Essentially, yeah.
I take no pleasure.
I think Masquerade has his game beat, though. In terms of, you know, interesting characters.
What do you know about this Brotherhood of St. Paul's?
They were definitely trying to emulate it, though.
The Brotherhood is well known amongst London vampire society. As long as our kind is discreet, and as long as they do not interfere, we have come to a mutual understanding.
How old are you?
I know this is beyond the pale, but may I inquire your age?
Really? And I thought you were gentlemen. If you must know, I'm 27. I've been 27 for a long time now, and 27 I shall remain.
Who granted you eternal youth?
And who bestowed upon you this eternal youth?
My maker. He left this isle a long time ago.
Very well. But I believe there is more to this than you are saying.
A lady has to have some secrets.
Okay, we've just about exhausted her questions.
Why did you save me in the canning factory?
I could hardly stand by and watch such a promising young blood as yourself be torn to shreds by some.
Why do you feel she's a
gutter
villain?
scoundrel.
Because she's the first character that's also a vampire that we're getting to know. It would make the most sense. What is a skull?
What type of vampire is a skull?
Not a true vampire. The deformed offspring of lesser vampires. It is a shame these creatures run wild, slaves to their baser instincts.
William Bishop wasn't the vampire that created me then.
No, Jonathan. Whatever their strength and demeanor, Skulls are the progeny of careless vampires. It cannot be the other way round.
About London.
Are there many vampires here in London?
Immortals
About as
are
stiff
of
as
a rare
Deus Ex Human
breed,
Revolution.
and we often tend to
A bit
hide,
more, actually.
But you may occasionally meet some of us at night.
Will they all be as affable as you, my lady?
I do not see why not. But remember, even the shark smiles before he bites.
That sounds like a lesson from experience.
Vampire politics are as intricate and sometimes tedious as a game of chess in a
This game and
gentleman's
its
club.
if this game could let go of its
learned from
precious words
experience it is
and learn
best
how
to
to, you know,
decline
use
to
brevity, I think it would have been improved a lot.
Do you know any of them? Have you an idea of the identity of the vampire who attacked me?
You mean your maker? No, Jonathan, I have no clue. But I fear he or she is as careless as cruel. To let you discover your new condition by yourself.
What do you mean?
Every now and then, you may discover an immortal
Oh,
in the
God.
dark of the night. But we are a rare and reclusive breed. Our progeny is almost never accidental.
What happened to London?
I've been away from London and England for 3 years.
I just want that dead lady or the dead guy in the background to pop up and like,
Things have
oh,
gone
he's
from bad
alive.
to worse here, Jonathan. I've lived
Just something
in
to
this
happen.
city for a long time, and I've never.
If you're gonna have
seen it like
long-winded
this.
cutscenes like this, they have to at least look interesting. This is just like one straight camera angle.
The Spanish flu has hit London that bad.
Yes, but it's not just that. I've heard things.
It's actually funny, Precious Slice. If you joined this stream last night around the end of it, it would look, and if you joined it right now, it would look like I had gone nowhere with the course of 24 hours.
Than the Spanish
Because
flu
we
is
ended it last
here
night talking
in
to
the
this
city.
lady in this same exact situation, and we just now finished our mission.
What is it you fear?
Fear has long since.
Well, it's
flown
not
this
exactly
form.
boring. The
But there
execution is just
something
off,
malevolent
a couple by a
circling
couple
us.
degrees.
I feel fear.
It
is
feels like this
merely
game could
waiting
be
in the
really good,
wings.
but it's just a couple degrees to the left or right off of its target.
When I awoke, changed, I was chased and attacked by vampire hunters. Prepared and well trained.
Though I can't be certain, more than likely it was the once glorious Guard of Priwen.
Oh my god, every line goes into another set of lines.
Once glorious, but still
Yeah, it's all
dangerous.
talking but no flavor. That's
They have
actually
seen
the
better
perfect way of
days,
describing it.
But all fanatics are dangerous. You would be wise to stay clear. They are sworn to destroy our kind.
You make them sound like some sort of cult.
More a society. And like all the best ones...
Yeah, it seems a bit
secret
directionless.
Society. I thought them almost gone. But it seemed they
This
have
is
been
a budget.
recruited.
This isn't exactly a AAA game, so you do have to keep that in mind. This is what they're starting to call a AA game. And maybe they're trying to do a bit too much with their budget. All right, we've exhausted all of our options to say stuff to her.
I bid you farewell. For now, my lady.
I must quickly analyze the blood I took from Nurse Crane's patient.
All right, go back to our office then. Probably mesmerize some of these people and level up more. No, she's level 3. We can't mesmerize her. They're just calling them AA games for marketing reasons. It's really, there's no such thing as a AAA game either. It's just all how they describe the big budget games, and AA games are basically medium budget games made by a non-indie studio, essentially. Guys, it doesn't really matter who I mesmerize when I actually do it. It's kind of not really going to look interesting. It's going to be like me biting an NPC. It doesn't really matter. You're not going to get something unique when you kill them. Besides a little line of dialogue. Analyze the blood.
Razvan Vasily was infected by Spanish flu, but also has the highly unstable blood of the Scowls. Is the London vampire epidemic transmitted through the flu? I should talk to Dr. Swansea
How
about
does
it.
no one ever notice his face and eyes? Establish a connection between vampiric epidemic and Spanish flu. Mission update. Okay, so the Spanish flu is linked to the vampire epidemic. Talk to Dr. Swansea. Luckily, that's right next to us.
The flower's dying. It needs water.
His eyes look like olives.
It's locked, all right.
It's Dr. Tippets. You read your office stuff first before I talk to you. Warning letter. Dr. Swansea must inform you of my deepest reservations concerning the Dr. Thore Strickland and Harvey Feddick case. Mr. Feddick has been hospitalized after a severe work injury. He may permanently lose the use of his arm if not treated adequately. Dr. Strickland claims that a surgical procedure may save the man's arm completely. I say it may also serve its functions. Okay, very good. The new hint for Dr. Strickland. Rare species of vampire. All the precious, precious reading. Why are you rifling through my office, good sir? Okay, that's everything.
Evening, Edgar. Could I get your professional opinion?
Please speak, but I have something important to tell you.
This strain of flu, it's very different from the one I saw in Europe. It's downright peculiar.
Really? What makes you say that?
The symptoms were different. I analyzed the blood.
I've just looked at the blood of one of our recently deceased.
I see. Do you have anything more to go on?
This disease spreads and looks like the Spanish flu, but its effects differ greatly. The London strain is different from the continental one.
This is very interesting. Did you find something
Yes,
else?
you sound like you're very intrigued.
Yes. Unlike the flu, the infected begin to show an increase in outwardly aggressive behavior. More than simple agitation. Once docile people become violent.
You mean like rabies? Is there a chance we could create a vaccine, Jonathan, like Pasteur? By the stove, that would be smashing.
There's a lot we're not seeing here, but it is spreading, and quickly. If we don't act, the whole city could be lost.
But Jonathan, we've a fantastic opportunity sitting right here in front of us. A weapon of choice.
What on earth do you mean?
Why, you, my dear boy. With your expertise and your blood...
Smashing indubitably.
We could isolate the properties that course through your veins. Think about the possibilities.
I may turn London into my realm.
And why not? What did Stoker say about the children of the night? Well, using my blood, I could create a whole army of vampires.
Surely you're joking.
We'll discuss this more later.
Well, I was trying to be jokey. I thought that would be a jokey response.
No, thank you, Jonathan. But as I said, I needed to talk to you. I have some rather bad news.
Yes?
I'm afraid it's your sister.
My sister?
Oh, yeah, her.
She's to be buried this evening at Whitechapel Cemetery. Your mother published the obituary this morning.
I see.
I'm sorry, Jonathan. Please accept my condolences.
Oh, we got Tin Mary's funeral. Alright, we're making progress. That's good. We actually have a decent mission objective. Let's go to the funeral. Do you have anything else left to ask this guy?
I need to talk to you, Edgar.
Please do so.
Did you reenact some jackass stunts? No.
Nurse Crane will not be returning to Pembroke Hospital.
Oh, really? Did something happen? She seems such a very capable woman.
He blackmailed Lady Ashbury.
She was blackmailing Lady Ashbury. Thought she was murdering patients as some sick upper-class game.
Nurse Crane was playing a dangerous game. She's lucky Lady Ashbury abhors violence.
Hospital
So you
financed by
manage a
vampires.
Hospital financed by a vampire.
Yes, Pembroke was founded by Lady Ashbury. She's also our largest donor.
We don't
We'll
care.
talk later.
Let's go to the funeral. Out this way. Alright, back to Whitechapel it is.
I never thought I would have to attend my murdered sister's funeral. Mary, I can't forgive myself.
Well, it's
I'll
like
find
watching
the
two
truth
stuffy
about what
Brits
happened
talk
to
about
us.
life.
I swear.
Isn't that what we've been doing? Yeah, please do not call me Dartigan. That doesn't look like a death pose. That looks like a woman who's desperately like, I don't even know what that pose is. How do you die with your hands above your head? Oh, these are level 14s. This is bad.
Filthy piece of shit!
Bite him. Fine. Don't bite him. Who'd have thought that this club would be more damaging than the Dragonbane sword?
This is no place for you, sir.
I need to start using my abilities more often. You guys didn't notice any of that, huh?
It's elite!
I literally had that fight in front of these two guys and they did not do anything. What the story is, we're looking for the guy who turned us into a vampire, and the Spanish flu is somehow linked to vampirism. That's so far what I'm getting from the plot.
My dear sister, I don't know if I have the strength.
This looks like a Bloodborne level. Hunter? It's the Hunter's Dream. A really bad Bloodborne level, but still a Bloodborne level. Should we really be holding a funeral ceremony in a graveyard overrun by the damned? Oh, he's got to teleport. Just get fucked. Oh. Oh, the stones actually break. Neat. Let's continue to level up. That has to be gross when you're drinking blood out of one of these things. No, I'm not going to spend the next half hour breaking tombstones because there's really no reason. They don't offer. There's nothing inside them. It's just there for effect. If you get if the fighting turns close to it, it looks cool. If they start breaking apart, that's all it does. Inception wall. Well, Inception wall and a finishing move is actually pretty good. It's more like a really long off trumpet sound than an Inception wand. It's like someone's playing a trombone like a mile away. In a valley. 125 bits from Panda for multitasking. Shrug. Widow in distress. What? Oh, it's this thing again. This has been a fun stream. Well, I'm glad you guys are enjoying me ragging on this game. Even a bad game can be fun when you're streaming it, I found. We saved the madam.
Are you all right, miss?
I don't know. Who were those
That's
people?
why David Cage games are fun to stream.
Why?
They've lost their minds in the epidemic. They won't come back for now.
You seem to know a lot about them, sir.
I'm Dr. Jonathan Reed. I'm investigating this disease.
I am Shaoshun. Thank you so much for helping me, Mr. Reed. I must go to the cemetery now. Goodbye.
Are you sure you might want to leave? Yeah, we just... Okay. Goodbye. What was she doing in here?
Carnage. Is Father Whitaker's disciple among the bodies, I wonder? This man's far too old to be Samuel. No. By the look of his clothes, this man's a docker. Samuel isn't here. I had better follow the blood trail.
Oh, it's another side mission. Oh, that's that lady. She's just gonna wait there. Let's follow the blood trail, see if we can do this real quick. Get some more experience. Wait for daytime? Daytime doesn't come until we sleep for some reason. That'd actually be interesting if the game actually had a actual real day-night system.
As I feared, Samuel no longer preaches the good word.
Oh, that guy died. That's Samuel right there, actually. I missed almost every strike. I have no idea what the vampire roar ability does that these guys are doing. It doesn't seem to do much of anything. No, there's no daytime gameplay in this game. That would actually be interesting. Well, that was jarring. I didn't know I'd finished killing that guy when that popped up. Father Whitaker is so... Okay, that's the guy he sent to this place, and he died. So I guess we can tell that to Father Whitaker now. That's the Doomsday Preacher we met.
I can't believe I'm doing this.
Alright, back to the actual mission at hand now. Attend the funeral. Yeah, actual daytime play would have been interesting, but like I said, low budget game. A low budget game kind of masquerading as a high budget game. Place is packed. How is anyone gonna have a funeral with zombies all over the place? Oh shit, I'm about to die. Oh shit, more dudes. Oh fuck. God damn it. No, we're attending the funeral of our sister. Oh, this is really getting on my nerves. That was pretty shaky for a while. Oh. Okay, stairs? Stairs are bad. You'd think having the high ground would be a good thing. That wah 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 sound is a cello. Okay, where's the funeral at? 200 bits from Panda. Good job. Fuck you, Stairs. You are now my mortal enemy. It's not a good idea to fight someone on it because the combat system doesn't let you to... I guess the attacks just go over their head. I couldn't hit that guy until I backed up. We've all learned a lot from Obi-Wan. I think we can agree on that. Tell the cello player a mile away to knock it off. There better not be anyone else attending this funeral due to the cemetery being filled with zombies. That's going to be a rough one to explain.
I can't reveal myself to my mother now. I must find a discreet spot to attend.
Why can't you reveal yourself to your mother? No one knows you're a vampire. They don't know you're a vampire.
Mother, why have you come here? This is proving far worse than I imagined.
They really hold this in the middle of the night.
I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. We commend unto thy hands of mercy, most merciful Father, the soul of our sister departed, and we commit her body to the ground. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Sister apparently wasn't very popular. Only Mom attended it.
Why kill my Mary and stick her here in this cold, god-awful place?
These are the legal requirements for the epidemic, madam.
Oh, Avery, I feel so tired. Please take me home.
Yes, madam.
Oh, Mary. What have I done?
The Caps just won the Stanley Cup.
One thing. One thing. This is a nightmare.
Jonathan, there is nothing you can do but accept it.
What brings you here?
I thought you could use the company. I am so sorry for your loss, Jonathan.
Well, I thought we were going to get a decent cutscene there, but it's right back to this now.
She was a good person. Vibrant, full of life. She was kindness incarnate, my Mary.
You're a good person, Jonathan. And a young Ekon. A newborn cast into the night without so much as a candle to guide your way.
She had been scouring the
Maybe this
most
game really
dangerous
deserves
parts of
replacing
London
text
in
with
search
text-to-speech.
And it led to her
That joke
death.
would get old quick if I started using it a lot, trust me.
I still hear her last thoughts.
Some sins are only
They
good when they're
echo
used
in my
once.
head.
They're not
Her
good for making
mind
into sin
shattered.
memes.
And and it haunts me.
Jonathan, stop. Listen carefully. You must come to terms with this. You must learn to live with what happened.
Oh, tell me how.
How is it possible? Tell me. Is it so easy to take a life every night?
And then just smile and nod at those you spared.
Don't you see? You're doing the work of our enemies, feeding your remorse. We are weakest when we grieve, and the guilt.
No, I've not
blurs our
seen Mad
senses.
Max, but I do know the memes for it. Runestorm, how are you, dude?
You felt this pain yourself.
You're up late, man.
Have endured this.
I don't want to lose you, Jonathan. I've lost so many friends. Loved ones I cherished. Pray for Mary's forgiveness, if you must.
I distinctly remember this scene from a trailer, and it looked way better in terms of like camera angles and everything. I think I'm gonna have to go back and look through the trailers for this game again, because I think they were pulling some major bullshit. You woke up a few hours ago. Huh. Well, as long as you got a good night's sleep then. Like I said, I remember this scene in the graveyard of them talking, and it did not look like this. It did not look like this cheap Mass Effect scene. You love the Detroit video. Well, thank you. Everyone seems to be pretty happy with it.
You may be right.
Of course.
Ask her about the Reapers.
I've stared upon this world for centuries, and time has taught me to deal with guilt, if not erase it.
What should I do then?
How's everyone doing? We're really enthralled by... Oh, he looked at us. He heard me talking.
Make your peace.
What is with that sudden turnaround?
The solace you
What was that?
My lady wants me to confess.
I thought he heard something behind him.
It's you who wants to confess, I think.
That was weird. He just looked away for no reason. Normally when you have a scene like that where the guy just suddenly whips his head around, that's going to lead to something. I wonder if that's not like an idle animation making its way into it. Reach St. Mary's Church. Aren't we, like, there already?
I cannot enter.
What do you want, Dex? I guess the developers realized that cutscene was kind of boring, so they just have him whip his head around like there's something interesting but going on behind him. Yeah, like I said, if you guys really want this game, wait for a sale. I really need to eat some people, though. I am, like, starting to get really under-leveled. Though I do have 2,000 experience. Oh shit, more people are showing up. That's not good. Where did they all come from? Holy crap. Oh, that's not good at all. Oh shit, the door closed behind me. Let's get the hell out of here. I'm about to die. Can they follow me up here? They cannot. They can. But now I can deal with them one-on-one. That's not working either. Now I've just actually blocked myself in. Okay, I found the limit where they can walk to. They can't go past that. So I can thin the herd somewhat. Oh, fuck. Damn it. They kill me so quickly at level 16. I've been trying to be a good boy, not eat people. And now I'm starting to pay the price. Death by Pimp Slap. Let's not go through that area again this time. What about you guys? Oh, everyone's like level 15s and 16s now.
Step back, sir. Step away, sir.
I'm not sure who's more dangerous, them. Where do I gotta go anyways? Back to this church. The eye was in the tomb. Main quest. Both ways lead to it, but one's full of vampires, one's full of vampire hunters. We'll try the vampire hunters. There's only 2 of them. I need blood. Oh. Okay, way easier this time. No, the rats don't give me experience. The people you eat give you experience to level up. Rats just give you extra blood. They fill up your blood meter. Like this. That did not kill him. We should be able to make it through this mission, though. I actually have played the Bloodstained game, the NES, the kind of like NES version of the game they made. Really good. Not about vampires, though.
And off to church he goes, a newborn seeking divine consent to lick the blood from the soft and pointy crown.
Who are you? Make yourself known.
Please be the interesting character in the game.
You reek of guilt and pointless compassion. Shed your skin, forget your old weaker
Okay,
self.
visually, I'm intrigued.
From me.
Ascalon does not approve of lone wolves who bring unwanted eyes to our pastures.
So your name is Ascalon?
Yeah, he just said that.
Ascalon's will is vampire law. Learn them, abide by them, or I shall return.
How does that guy
as your
ever
judge
conceal
and
himself in society? He's like 8 feet tall and has arms that reach down to his elbows. What the hell is going on back there?
Immortals try my patience with their plans and unsolicited counsel.
Well, that was actually the first interesting character in the game. I think we need to help this guy. Oh no, that's a bad guy. They were killing a vampire. Oh shit. Don't point your crosses at me. Have some blood magic. Shit, can I please get away from him?
This man stunned me with his faith. His crucifix. This is not good news.
There's a guy down there still. What did you miss? We just met an actual interesting character. I know it happened, actually. A very, very, very large black vampire dude. Alright, we should almost be to the hospital. Check the map. Okay, it's right down this alley, I believe, right? Okay, yeah, this is where, right here. You're the mute lady, right? Do you have anything to say now?
Hello again, miss.
Wow, learning a lot about you. Wow, she has a level 5 mesmerize. She would be hard as hell to drink. I cannot drink her, guys. She's like level 5. Even though this is the game has a weird mechanic on how you have to drink people. You have to be able to mesmerize them first and lead them away. Otherwise, you can't. And she's way too high level. Who would this be? Oh, that's this guy. He's like peeking through someone's window.
Can I help you?
Have you any news of Nurse Crane and her dispensary?
I'll never know what goes on in that place. But as long as people are getting better, I'll stop investigating her.
Nothing
Goodbye,
new.
Mr. Darby. Farewell.
Widow in distress. Oh, that's our mom. I guess.
Yes? What is it that you want?
I'm sorry to disturb you at such a late hour.
No worries, my son. I'm still quite awake, having just returned from a funeral.
Yes, I know.
No, I've not seen the new Blade Runner.
I don't know.
Being very weird, my
May I help
son.
you, child? You seem somewhat perturbed.
I haven't the strength to cross the threshold.
Oh, I was wondering if we'd be able to
pray.
cross into the church.
To cleanse my soul.
The church is shut by order of the bishop. But I'm still the vicar of St. Mary's, if that is any use to you, my son.
So we can't enter the church.
You seem to me a good soul, Vicar. But this is a personal matter.
There are no secrets from God, my son. If your heart needs comfort, consider me your chapel. For I can be as silent as stone.
I have words for the departed.
I've words for one departed. They're not for living ears to hear.
Your eyes burn with rage, yet I see the pain that lies beyond. I am here.
What do I do besides video games? I have a full-time job.
God's creatures.
I don't really talk about it though, because that'd make it too easy to find me.
Between us and the Lord.
Very well, priest. As you seem quite adamant.
Open your heart, my son. Tell me what burdens you. With whom do you wish to speak?
She was my sister.
She was my sister.
You seem so troubled by the loss of this girl. What happened to her?
She was murdered.
She was murdered.
I see. And how are you feeling, my son?
I feel responsible.
I feel responsible. The pain is consuming me.
I have a final question for you, my son. This is of the utmost importance.
Ask your question, Vicar.
What words would you like to say to your poor sister?
I promise to find those responsible, or maybe please forgive me. That sounds better, actually.
I killed you. There's no excuse. My dear Mary, forgive me.
You have been heard, my son, and your burden will lighten if your words are sincere. Go in peace now, and live your life in the way she would have wanted.
No, I'm not related to the CinemaSins guys. Completely independent. Where's this widow in distress? I thought I already did that.
I confessed to that vicar. Do I feel better? Only time will tell.
Where do we actually see our side missions at? Widow in distress. I thought I already helped her. There's something else she needs to do, but I don't know where it is. don't know what I did for them. We can turn that guy's mission in as well. And trinkets and more. I guess no one's actually in danger. Let them meet. Go back to the place and meet the doctor. Gotcha. Remove that marker. So we're headed down. Let's actually turn that mission. I think there's a mission I can turn into the priest over here, if he's still here. I've talked to you, haven't I?
Hello again, miss.
Yeah, I wish there was a fast travel system too. No, it's a quiet
Very
lady.
well. Goodbye.
What is Agony about? It's a walking simulator in hell. That's pretty much it.
An angel made flesh,
You're new.
I tell you.
Are you?
Good evening, Mr. Nithicott.
Oh no,
And
we've
good
talked to him
evening
as well.
to you too,
I cannot remember
good
any of these
sir.
characters
Can
who
I
I've
be
talked
of
to.
any help?
Did you know the mute
That's
florist
new.
is a member of a secret society?
No, I didn't. But I thank you for this information, sir. For it only enriches the mystery surrounding the precious camellia.
You will kill everyone in this game.
Are you not curious? Is there not
Like I
more
said, you
wish to
can't.
know?
The
That
game.
girl has
If
not
you
an
kill too many
ounce of
people in an
malice
area,
her.
the area,
Whatever she
basically
may
all
be
the other
hiding,
characters
it's
leave the
certain
area.
to be for the benefit of most, if not all.
I fear you are a hopeless romantic, Mr. Nithicott.
Guilty as
Otherwise, you could
charged,
just really
Dr.
quickly
Reed.
over-level yourself, and the game would be too easy.
I'll leave you alone, sir.
Okay, where's the quickest route back to the... Okay, that kind of takes us there. Plus, we already killed everything along the path. Nope, they've all respawned. He's level 14, though. Not too shabby. Now, which way? Nope, that goes back. Literally, that guy spawned back there the way I just came. Strange. That's going the wrong way. Shit. Can you mark NPCs on a compass? Well, they move around, so when... No, you can't. That's... Oh, careful. Careful, game. That's the way we want to go. I should mark that hideout, though. I need to level up. Ow, 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 ow. You feel like the NPCs in Majora's Mask were more unique? You're completely correct. They actually had a lot of character, despite not being able to talk and being really rudimentarily polygonal. But there was a lot more character involved. So far, we've met one interesting character in this game, and we only met him briefly a few minutes ago. I need all the experience I can get. that marker? Yeah, it's right over here. There it is. Oh, come on, leave me alone, guys. I think that's it, isn't it? Nope, wrong way. Maybe I can get these guys to fight these guys. Come on. Lots of prey for you. Oh, shit. Yeah, there they go. I was wondering if that would actually happen. Nice to know. Dante's Inferno. That's a game I want to play mainly because it has a level set in hell that is nothing but dongs. I mean, literally giant tornadoes of penis in that game. Which is not something I can actually describe about any other game. Oh. Who wouldn't want to see a dick hurricane? I don't care how non-gay you are, a dick hurricane is something everyone needs to see at least once. Okay, red mask, dude. Real major pain in the ass. Alright, let's take care of the gun guy. Okay, there should be a safe house here that I can use.
I have this thirst for blood.
You guys cannot deny you don't want to see a dick hurricane. I will not believe you if you say that. Impossible to not want that. Don't accept the quest from the magic jar. I have no idea what that is a reference to, dude. Let us heal. Alright, we've got 2,700 points. We need to level up. We need a new weapon, too. We can get a ultimate as well, apparently. Abyss. You create a shadow vortex at your target's feet, coming to life. Your shadow interrupts an enemy in the area and inflicts tremendous damage. Blood Cauldron. You focus your power to boil your target's blood, causing it to violently explode, dealing damage to the target and anything nearby. How much are these? Maybe we should get a... What do you guys think we should get? Should we get... Rage? No, Rage is boring. You lose control and let the beast take over for a short time. The beast teleports... Oh, no, actually, that's not just Berserker Rage. The beast teleports itself to all enemies around you and strikes them with furious blows. I wish there was like a video that played and showed what it did. Abyss is like an AoE kind of a thing. Blood Cauldron. This thing makes an enemy explode. Level up my projectile. We can probably do both. No, that's what it would take all my points just about to level up this once. I don't even see what it... Oh, it just does a bit more damage. I'm thinking Abyss. We'll grab Abyss. The rest of these abilities seem kind of garbage, to be honest. Life regeneration when using bite. I think we just need more health. These are always cheap. Get some more health. And more stamina. Do I raid people? Sometimes. Usually I don't really think of doing it. It's usually people I follow or know. Blood capacity. I don't think I have enough. Nope, just short of that. Alright, we'll hold on to our points for now. No, 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 no. Alright, that leveled us up a couple times. Disappearances in Whitechapel. Wait, I didn't kill anyone. Reports of mysterious disappearances have escalated in the past weeks. It has reached the point where witnesses have to queue before recounting their testimonies to an officer. Although this phenomenon appears to be a nationwide occurrence, the statements of the last 24 hours have converged around a single area in the county. Who disappeared? I didn't kill anyone. It wasn't me. Like, I did nothing. That's a critical. It got to critical. I did nothing. Unless that one lady I convinced not to do anything anymore just made it worse. But any choice I made would have made it miserable. Lady Ashbury didn't kill anyone. It's only me that affects anything, I think. Like, see, none of these people are dead, but it got to critical anyways. If it gets to hostile, everyone leaves. If I kill anyone in Whitechapel, it'll probably go to hostile. Prices and stocks of the merchants in this district may have changed. Well, whatever. Oh, she went missing? That's why. I could have killed her or told her to resign, but she went missing instead. Let's check out our new ability. Shadow Mist isn't very good. Let's change this one to our Abyss ability. Oh yeah, there it is. No, never mind. We don't have to. Abyss is both R triggers and left trigger together. We still need to make our way back to this place anyway, so we'll fight someone on the way. I've created a new meme. What meme did I create, and how do I stop it? Let's check this out. Let's get more people together, though. Big guy. Why isn't it working? Wait, what? I have a cooldown on this ability even though I didn't use it. That makes no sense. Maybe I didn't have enough blood. Ow. I can't stop progress. You're probably... I don't think it's actually possible to stop a meme. Let's try this again. Nice. All right. Is this the right way? It is indeed. We need to go back to Widow in Distress and convince her to go back to Whitechapel at some point. But first, to this Meet Edgar Swansea. On a scale of dialogue to no dialogue, I give this a game a dictionary. It needs something. A better writer.
Are precious when binding you to the earth. You. I remember you.
Oh, oh, oh! That was sudden. Camera change. Just, dude.
Fear be gone. I would harm no child of my making.
This is your doing. You made me. Made me this creature. What are you?
I am the land. You are our champion.
Stop your riddles, ghost. Why choose me?
You selected me. Chose me.
As shall my children yet to come.
What is it you seek?
This age is sickly. An ancient poison, an older rage.
I tend to seem absent-minded sometimes. Sometimes when I'm trying to think of something to entertain people.
This has something to do with the epidemic.
Seek truth, my champion. Defeat the serpent of knowing with iron spur.
That meant a lot.
I've had enough of others making decisions for me, pretending to know how I should feel or behave. So the vampire who made me is some sort of disembodied entity? Or was he just projecting this vision in my mind? Maybe Edgar can help me with this one.
Good old Edgar. Oh, she just left this on our desk, did she? Ekans are like the aristocrat vampires. We totally didn't copy all the ideas from, you know, refill all those, from Masquerade of having blood, you know, vampire clans.
God protect us. You've got a leech.
Is that my brother? He's got the same haircut.
My hospital.
Same fashion
my mission
sense.
is to heal while you go about warring.
You've set the table for a snake. I wonder why there's venom in your food.
I'm growing tired of your song. You're a woodsman, McCallum, not a doctor. Return to your hunt.
Remember, I've a good nose for machinations. I can flare the scent at a mile. You can't hide from the guard.
Leave him, Jonathan. This is sacred ground.
He's gonna stand there and look at me?
And I just had the carpet cleaned.
I think after I beat this game, I'm gonna watch
This is very bad news.
Helsing or something.
Bad news indeed.
I needed a real fucking vampire. Did he leave any more notes for me?
What happened?
The hospital has been attacked. We have injured patients, at least one dead and several missing. This has spiraled out of control. Even the most infirm are asking to be allowed to return home.
Confidence must be restored.
We cannot have the people lose faith in this institution. This hospital is their only hope.
Of course, you're right. But we cannot afford a public scandal. It would ruin us. We must restore order, and quickly.
You mentioned a dead patient. Who is he?
She, Jonathan. She was Miss Harriet Jones. I found her room like a slaughterhouse. Blood everywhere. The duty nurse is taking care of the mess.
I'm your only hope again. I'll help you.
Very well. I'll help.
Have I watched the Helsing parody by Team 4-Star? Yes, I have.
And this concerns
Excellent work
you
by
as it
them.
involves vampires. Someone has taken advantage of our...
But I've actually watched the actual anime of it too. One of the few animes I've ever watched.
I may turn my head when you or her ladyship indulge, but I will not allow this place to become a nest for street feeders.
Please then, tell me.
Sean Hampton, the man we thought we'd saved at the docks. It seems he was infected after all.
So Hampton became more
the
beast
Irish
than
dude.
man.
Exactly. And now Guard of Prewen suspects the hospital of vampire activity. Do you realize what that could mean for us?
I'll protect you all.
Rest assured, I will protect you and your staff.
McCullum is a fanatic. The Guard will stop at nothing. You don't know what they're capable of, Jonathan.
Very well. Since I brought Mr. Hampton here, I will put an end
What's
to
the
this.
next big zombie craze? I mean, what's the next big monster craze? I think werewolves need to make a comeback. They've been out of the spotlight since like the early 80s. Well, guys, I think I'm going to call it a night. I don't think I can take much more of this game tonight. I'm like fighting against drowsiness at this point. So, I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up tonight. You guys have been an amazing audience as always. Hopefully you got some enjoyment out of that. This is not a difficult game. This is not an easy game to stream. It's hard to make this kind of funny. So, I will be back tomorrow. I might start tomorrow's stream earlier. Maybe at like 6 o'clock. I haven't decided yet. I really need to start playing more of this game so I can get it done quicker. But we'll see. But thank you to those who donated bits tonight. You guys were very generous. As well as those who those who subscribed or resubscribed. Thank you for that as well. And thank you to my mod team for doing an excellent job. 6 p.m. on Eastern Coast time for those asking about time zones. Alright guys, enjoy the rest of your night or evening, whatever time zone you personally live in, and I will see you tomorrow. Good night, everyone.